Welcome to Stick Drift. That was terrible. Try again.
No, let's just keep it. Let's keep rolling.
I was like, hey, you guys, welcome to my YouTube channel.
Yeah. That was great. Good intro.
Anyway,
good intro. We got this.
Yeah. It's Wednesday. We're feeling punchy. I got eggnog over here on my left, so we're just farting around. That's what we're up to. But yeah, this is our second for the main pod, the main force. I mean, we kind of had a little mini episode in the middle. I guess we can kind of talk at length about it. It was really a solo pod for me, but yeah, we kind of talked about this back and forth. It was something I wanted to do in our off weeks. Little bite-sized episodes that are kind of evergreen and topic-based. They're called crash courses, and that's kind of what we dropped last week. And it was 5 games for me that had quote the juice, and you know, I kind of get into it there. But if you want to really listen, I recommend going back and taking a shot. But I just like talking at length about stuff I like, and that really afforded that space. Having kind of that, not dead period, but that week to be able to drop something was really freeing. I like that. So I don't know. You listened to it.
Yeah.
What do you think? Was it okay?
Yeah, it was great. Other than a little bit of audio issues here and there. We're still getting used to audio issues. Hopefully this episode, right, we've got them all sorted out. That's the goal.
Yeah.
So
already it sounds good.
But yeah, no, it was a great. I listened to it while I was putting together a Gundam Caliburn model. So
way to go.
It's I thought that the pinball game, that sounded interesting the way you described it. Hadn't heard of that one, and so I didn't get around to looking it up or anything like that. But the way you described it was pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's hard to explain what it was. The game in question is Creature in the Well. I really enjoy that game. And it's like I said, it's that perfect bite-sized little game that takes inspiration from a common thing and kind of puts a spin on it, which is pinball. It takes that genre and kind of does interesting things with it. It almost becomes a pinball hack and slash. It's really interesting. There's no real enemies to fight, but yeah, I recommend that. Now I kind of get into the episode with it. Let's be real, most of the crash course was Outer Wilds. So.
Yeah, no, I did pick up Outer Wilds today actually, so that's on my Steam library now. So I'm gonna get around to it.
Music to my ears.
It was on sale for Halloween season, so
okay.
I'll get around to it, but you tried to get me into the Hitman series forever ago. It didn't click with me, but I'd definitely be willing to give it another shot at some point.
But it is like. This is something I want to kind of get into down the road in another crash course is like podcasting games. Like, what are good games that you can listen to, audiobooks, podcasts, that sort of thing. I feel like the games that do that the best are systemic games that feel like gears are turning and you use your brain and not your thoughts necessarily, if that makes any sense. You're not having to turn on for the actual world or anything. You're just seeing what's happening. You're responding to it. I think that Hitman is kind of the pinnacle of that. I liken it to something like Metal Gear Solid 5 too, where you're just trying to explore the world, find out your opportunities, your points of ingress, and the stories you kind of build throughout your play. And that's what I love about Hitman. You're always going to have fun stories, and they know what game they made, and they are constantly in conversation with you as a player, and that's why I think it's brilliant. And the package is just unbeatable. It's 3 games for 1 once you get the World of Assassination. So if you really get a shot, I recommend it. It's the perfect podcast game. I would play through everything like at least once just to get the real gist of the story, because the story is good.
Yeah.
But in terms of just like coming back to it, because they encourage repeat plays of every level, I think it can't be beaten for that. You're going to get tons of hours out of that game.
Sure.
So yeah, but that was a little bit about the crash course for sure.
Yeah.
And we're going to, I guess, discuss what you're interested in, because you wanted to drop one next week. I guess what are we kind of going to be talking about?
Yeah, so I think I was just going to drop one about the sort of games written visual novels written by Kinoko Nasu, the Nasu verse, so to speak. So those are, I'll talk a little bit about Tsukihime. I haven't played that one in a long time.
Okay.
I'd like to play that remake when it's fully out. They're doing a remake kind of like in the way that they're doing the Final Fantasy VII remake, except this remake is going to be in 2 parts. And the first part is out. It's on Switch and PS4, but I'm kind of waiting for a Steam release to pick it up if I can.
Okay.
I could obviously get it for either of those consoles, but I prefer to have my things on Steam right now. Because it just makes things a lot easier, especially with the Steam Deck, and so
right.
But so I'll talk about that first game a little bit, but then I'll mostly be just talking about the ones that I've played recently, Fate Stay Night and Mahoyo, or Witch on the Holy Night. So I'll be talking about those and kind of just delve into some of the try and wax poetic about it a little bit and just talk a little bit in depth on some of the some of the plot points and some of the mechanics and just what I think of it, what my personal experience with the game. So I'm gonna try and make it interesting, have an interesting perspective on it. So definitely give it a listen when that drops next week. So it'll drop sometime next week, hopefully. So
yeah, I absolutely will. I know zero to nothing about this, but you have talked at length about what it is, and I'm kind of excited to jump in because that's kind of like road I haven't walked yet. It's interesting ground I want to tread upon. So I'm kind of I really want to take a jaunt for sure. So, and hopefully this is a good introduction to that, and I hope that's what it is for a lot of people.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to try and make it. Essentially, I'm just going to keep it self-contained to those sort of the novel, visual novel universes, or in case of Mario, technically a kinetic novel, because there's not really any choices you make in that particular game.
Right.
So. Okay.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, but that'll be next week. I recorded mine on Wednesday, so it dropped on Thursday or Friday just to get everything done. It'll probably be the same cadence for that. And as we want to drop them, we obviously, in a point of content, we've talked back and forth about crash courses we're interested in, and the format I want it primarily to be solo based, but there are a couple topics that we really want to dive into, like for instance the From IP.
That's going to be a long crash course. That might even get broken up into like several different crash courses on separate games in the FromSoft library. We could talk at length on any one of those games, and I think we would have enough conversation pieces to, especially Dark Souls 2, because that's the best one.
Okay. Well, I will let you take the reins on that one. I will join you for it.
You still got to complete that game, brother. I mean,
maybe we make it a solo pod then, if that's the credential. I've completed every
What a great game! My goodness.
Mike Minotti from GamesBeat, he just finished that too. I was watching him play streams of it.
Nice. That's a fun.
Yeah, but that's going on next week. We'll try to drop them as we feel like it, but we got enough content to go, so it's probably going to be in our off weeks. So this is kind of the flagship show, the Stick Drift, and then Crash Course as we want to make them. So we're going to get into some new hotness, some new video games we've been playing. You got the one I want to talk about. I want to hear about this Keanu Reeves fella. What is going on?
Okay, hang on. Let's back it up. All right. So the Keanu Reeves DLC for Sonic X Shadow Generations, I believe that comes out in December. So it's not out yet. We're waiting. We are patiently waiting for the Keanu Reeves content drop. All right, we gotta have this. It's not a complete experience without the Keanu Reeves content drop, right? But
so do we need to mothball this discussion until this comes out?
No. So the game itself, though, I mean, honestly, it is one of the best Sonic gaming experiences probably since the last Sonic Generations drop.
I mean, you would know. I mean, you are the Sonic. I know. I mean, listen, for people that are
Here's the guy. There he is.
Yes, he has his bona fides, his bona fides, whatever you want to say. Noah knows Sonic like the back of his hand or his left shoulder.
Yeah. No, it's a fantastic experience, though. All throughout it, you're getting these flashbacks to Shadow's story. I'm talking about the Shadow Generations portion of it. That's the portion I played recently. I haven't gone back and played that Sonic Generations portion again yet. I plan to. I just haven't had the time and nor the drive to do it, because I played that not too long ago again, and so this would be my third time going through it. So,
so this is your playing Generations as it is.
Yeah, but you can skip straight to the Shadow Generations portion of it, which is sort of a DLC sort of thing that they threw in there for the remaster. But
that was gonna be my next. You could do that. Yeah, I was wondering.
Yeah, so you can just skip straight to the Shadow Generations, luckily, and it's just a separate story contained in that sort of storyline. It's a side story that goes on during the main events of Sonic Generations, and they tie it in really well. It's pretty interesting how they explain like what's going on with Shadow during that whole process. But so yeah, they've got the flashbacks to Shadow's story, and I'm sitting here, having all this nostalgia come back to me, tears in my eyes, bawling my eyes out, I mean, I'm just eating it up.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm almost more of a Shadow fanboy than a Sonic fanboy, so I really like that guy.
Shadow is cool.
Yeah.
All right. Someone who is not a Sonic liker, but a Sonic abider. I appreciate Sonic from an aesthetic level. He seems like, in some way, the vestiges of 90s, what's the word? Just kind of like attitude.
Attitude, yep. Attitude, yeah. That's Sonic.
Yeah, Attitude era, Blue Sky Gaming. It feels like Sonic. I mean, he was tapping the foot in the 32-bit era.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, that's kind of what you know Sonic for, at least for me. I know him from you playing the game. So I've watched you play pretty much every game in the series.
Yep.
With rare exception. I don't think you've played the Rise of Lyric game in front of me, though.
No, I haven't even played that game yet.
Okay.
That's one of the few I haven't picked up.
Right. That Sonic Boom game is probably the worst. So,
yeah.
But yeah, so I guess in terms of structure, is it like Generations? Like it's hub and spoke?
Yeah.
You have a map walking left and right too. I guess talk about what it looks like.
So they saw Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury. They saw that, and the Sonic team said, "Let's do that." So what they did is they have that interconnected sort of 3D world. Now that's the hub world for it, so it's not quite the same. It's not like just your levels are there too, but you can get to your levels through there. But there's this interconnected hub world, and you get to run around and play around in this interconnected hub world using Shadow, using his new powers and abilities that you unlock as you progress through the story, which is a short romp. You can finish it in an evening. It took me maybe 4 or 5 hours to finish it.
Okay. Definitely digestible. Yeah, definitely digestible.
Yeah. So it's a good time though, and I recommend it. even sure, $40 or $50 game, however much it is. I don't remember how much it was, but 5 hours of gameplay. That 5 hours just in the Shadow Generations section. If you're someone who already has Sonic Generations, you're thinking, I don't know if I want to buy the game again just for the Shadow portion. I think it's worth it. I think it's a good deal. Because there's a ton of replayability there as well. These levels and these challenges inside the hub world. Revolving around those levels. They have little challenges that you can do. You do it during the story progression, but you can also just repeat them to sort of get better ranks and things like that, and find collectibles and things. They have all that replayability in there for people who are looking for something to sink their teeth into. But if you're like me and you're just wanting to, play through it, experience the story, have a good time, have some Niagara Falls, You're gonna enjoy it, especially Sonic fan or not. I think you will just enjoy it. It's just a well put together game, and that's saying a lot these days. So,
I'm looking at the listing on PSN. It's a $50 game completely. That is kind of shocking, honestly.
Yeah,
that's cheap. I mean, for new content, an old game, that's cheap. I mean, so in terms of visual quality, do you feel like it's a step up from the 360 version of this?
Yeah, absolutely. Just from I booted it into the Sonic Generations portion a little bit, played around with it just to see, and it's a step up in quality. It's I think that don't quote me on this, but I think that Shadow Generations portion of it, I think that's running on the Sonic Frontiers engine. So
interesting. So did they build original Generations in that engine, or is this a bolt-on with the Frontiers engine to Sonic Generations, do you think?
Yeah, I'm thinking it's a bolt-on with that a bolt-on to the original Sonic. So they're essentially running both engines side by side. Because Generations was built in Hedgehog engine that they built for Sonic Unleashed. But I think Frontiers was the first time they had a new engine since that Hedgehog engine, because that Hedgehog engine lasted Generations, then Colors, then not Frontiers, Forces. So those 3 games were all in Hedgehog engine along with Unleashed, but Unleashed, another fantastic Sonic experience. I love Unleashed a lot, so either that Wii version or that 360 version, they're both great.
Okay, good. Yeah, that's something I think you should do, is the ultimate Sonic list. What are the top? Rank them, actually rank them, in terms of what we have now. And I guess as more come out, I guess you can do it again. But have the definitive list for if you feel comfortable doing it. I think you could be really good at that, because you touched every one of them, right? Except for Sonic Boom.
There's a few here and there that I haven't touched, but I've pretty much touched them all.
Try out that for me. Pull that out and throw Rise of Lyric in there.
But I would say that if that list were to happen, Shadow Generations would be up on that list pretty high. It's a great experience that I can recommend to somebody who doesn't even like Sonic, and I can be like, hey, you want to play a good game?
Yeah.
Play Shadow Generations. It's a good game without even being a Sonic fan. If you like platformers, Shadow Generations, good game. It's got a great sense of speed, a great sense of style. It's got replayable levels with hidden routes, and you can go different directions in the 3D levels and even in the 2D levels, and so it's fun. It's fun.
Well, can I admit something to you? I just bought it.
That's awesome.
I saw the price tag and I was like, "This is so cheap. Why don't I just get this?
Just play it. Just take an evening, play it, and tell me what you think. Maybe on the next pod." And it's a good game.
I'll play the Shadow. So, I guess for someone that hasn't played Generations all the way through, would you start there, or would you just touch the Shadow stuff first?
Honestly, I would say play the Shadow stuff first. Go for it. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
I really think that's the most refined Generations gameplay. Unless if you aren't very, good at fast-paced platformers, in which case you'd want to play the Sonic Generations portion. Because the Shadow Generations portion is a little bit more difficult. They expect you to, have the basics of Sonic gameplay down before you move to the Shadow Generations, because not only are the levels designed to be a little bit more difficult, but they also add on more mechanics, a little bit more complexity. Some of the mechanics don't really stick. They've got a few that are I don't know. But overall, it's a good time, so.
Okay.
And it doesn't waste your time. That's the best part about it.
Gotcha. So that's Sonic Shadow Generations. we might need to edit this out. Your video dropped as far as I can see. So,
okay.
Just um. All right, we're back. We had a little snafu, but we are back to talk about Silent Hill 2. I haven't played the original. You have.
It's a good game.
Yeah, okay. Talk to me about it.
Yeah, it's just so atmospheric, and I mean, James Sutherland's just such a cool protagonist. He's my main character I use in Dead by Daylight. Shout out to Dead by Daylight.
Okay.
Fun little multiplayer experience. If you've never checked it out, I haven't played it in a long time because my play group stopped playing it for various reasons, and so it's fun to play solo, but it's definitely better with friends. So if you have like one or two buddies that are willing to get into it, it's a good time, especially if you like they've got pretty much every horror franchise you can think of off the top of your head in that game now. So even some non-horror stuff like D&D. So
really,
yeah, they've got like the D&D Vecna in there. So I mean,
oh, very cool, very cool.
Yeah, so it's a good time. Yeah.
Yeah. So Silent Hill 2, did you play it on the original hardware? Or did you play the remastered versions of it?
Actually, I emulated it. I emulated it on a PC. So
on PC, was it the original version that?
Yeah, the original version, that PS2 version. Yep.
Okay. I guess I feel like I'm at a disadvantage here because I've always wanted to play the original Silent Hill 2 because it's so lauded and critically acclaimed. It's like the game in that series that people talk about. I mean, the other ones are not perfunctory, shall we say, but they're not like as groundbreaking as this game was in terms of storytelling, presentation, characters, the whole nine yards. It is the game still in that series that stands out. And there was some trepidation that came with this remake announcement that Bloober Team was going to be the ones making it. And if you know Bloober Team, they're pretty hit or miss. They really are. They have made some good games, though. They have. One of them being Observer. I think Observer is excellent. It has Roy Batty from, the character Roy Batty. Batty is Rutger Hauer, the actor, from Blade Runner. He's the main protagonist of Observer, and he's very good in it. It's that he was kind of getting up there at the time of recording, so some things are a little slurred and stuff, but the actual performance is not bad. But Observer's good, made by Bloober Team. It's a first person, kind of like it's kind of a horror game, more of a thriller, techno thriller. It feels like the mind-jacking segments of Cyberpunk 2077, but you're like a detective. You're basically you're not brain dancing because that's the Cyberpunk thing, but you are basically doing that in other people's brains, and you're observing them as like a detective trying to find out what's going on. Very cool game, very good game, and they actually remastered that for PlayStation 5. It's an even better version of it. Bloober Team, kind of hit or miss. The Medium wasn't very well received. Another horror game, primarily on Xbox. It had a cool premise where you can there's kind of two levels of presentation. You can kind of flip between these two versions of any part of the game at any time to uncover hidden secrets. Think of it like the I forget what they call it. It's like a glass in Dishonored 2. If you haven't played it, it's a glass that shows you two different timelines. That's what the Medium was trying to do, was show two different timelines at the same time in game and have you switch at will to go to each to solve puzzles. The execution was pretty lackluster, and it wasn't very delicate with its themes in coming, just to cover like a bunch of mental health stuff. It's kind of a bag of the worms they dove into. Not great. That's why people had trepidation about this Silent Hill 2. But for all accounts, people love this game. It's kind of shocking. I guess, what have you heard about it? This new one.
Yeah, I've heard mixed things from this new one. Some people really like it. Some people really don't like it. I listened to a bit of the voice acting. It's very different. At least the performances that I've heard so far sound almost worse than that original Silent Hill 2.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from. Having played it, I feel differently. It is extremely contextual. I will tell you that. When you were playing it beginning to end, it's different.
Okay.
It's so weird about this game. Like that being the issue. Out of context, everything sounds so odd.
Yeah.
It's so bad. But when you're playing it, there's just something about it. It feels like you need to be sitting in it almost. I thought the presentation for that game, every time it was shown, I was like, this looks terrible. I have less than zero interest in this game. And I was like, you know what? It's getting enough good word of mouth. We can talk about it on the pod. I love horror games. It's Halloween. It's kind of a confluence of things that got me to buy it.
Sure.
And it was kind of a tall order because it's a $70 video game. It's not chump change. But I was like, I'm in the tank for it enough. Even if I haven't played the original, I'm going to. And normally I'm the guy that goes like, if there's something new out, I want to play the original version of it. Like, for instance, Persona 3 Reload. I played a lot of original portable before jumping into it. So with what the game was before they actually took to it. And from my first hour in it, hour and change, just like hour and a half, something like that. I played a little bit this morning too, during lunchtime, really. I really liked it. I think contextually it is really good. I think the voice actor for Jane Sunderland is really excellent. And it might be a taste thing. It just might be a taste thing, and that's fine. I've heard more good things than I have bad things. That's why I'm saying I've heard people love it. But there are those people that have played that original version of that game that it's so burned into their brain that it's supposed to be this certain way. So when this new one comes out, it's so different in some ways that kind of maybe grinds their gears. I understand.
Yeah.
But in terms of story, in terms of setup, I have touched Silent Hill 2, the original, enough to know where it's coming from. I played probably the first couple hours of it. When you get into Silent Hill, basically, is kind of when I stopped. Because I found like the controls kind of lacking, and it was pretty stiff going back to even in that 360 remaster, which people actually don't really like. It's changed a couple things there too. Yeah. And I think they don't even like the voice acting in that because I think they went back and changed that.
Okay.
Redubbed it for the PS3. I forget what this collection is called. Maybe just Silent Hill collection. I think it's 2 and 3. I think that they did PS3 and 360. So really, this is kind of a third crack at it, almost. At this concept, at this version of this game, and I think it's probably the best that I've seen in terms of just pure execution. It really shocks me that Bloober really went out of their way to make it as accurate as possible. It feels different in the actual gameplay because it is a different viewpoint. It's not like above your character. It is behind the back, very PlayStation centric. Your third person.
It's like they made it play a lot like a Resident Evil, like modern Resident Evil game, from what I understand.
Yeah. Right, Resident Evil by way of like not Dead Rising, but it's a melee centric game is what I've seen so far. There are guns in it because Silent Hill 2 has guns, but in the opening hours you're hitting leg creatures with lumber.
Yeah, they added a little bit more combat in there too, from what I understand. So it's a little bit more combat centric. A little bit less, about like the atmosphere maybe, and about the surprise of combat. It's more of a little bit more about the inevitability of combat. So if that's not what you're looking for, then maybe the original would be more up your alley. But if you're wanting something that plays like a modern, plays like a Resident Evil 4, essentially, right? Would you compare it to like a Resident Evil 4? Because from what I've seen of gameplay, that's kind of where they're going with the gameplay of this new iteration of Silent Hill 2.
Yeah, it's very similar. It's very similar with what Capcom did.
Yeah.
With Resident Evil 4. The main difference lies in the camera angle, I think. It being inherently different than the original makes it all that more changed. Resident Evil 4 is really just like a refinement of what makes 4 so good.
Yeah.
And in some ways, it does change some things, but some stuff that was outdated originally, they changed and made better in Resident Evil 4, that remake.
Yeah.
And I don't think they make everything better in Silent Hill 2. I think there are some clunky things. I think it doesn't run particularly great. It needs to be better optimized for the new consoles. I ran into a lot of hitching, a lot of texture popping, stuff that can be ironed out. The game just came out relatively recently in the last couple weeks, so it's not a perfect game at all. But I really dig it. I really do. I think it's definitely not going to be for everybody. I try to take a game at face value, deal with it on its own merits. But you do have to be patient. It feels like a very slow burn, and I just happen to be in the tank for it. I like slow burn games.
Yeah.
And from what I could tell, it's not that long. I think it's like 15 hours, maybe.
Yeah, the original wasn't very long either. So it's a game that's meant to be replayed because it has multiple endings, things like that.
Right.
So.
There's like some missable stuff throughout the game. Like if you don't get it on, you're kind of screwed out of it. But yeah, only an hour and a half in. I haven't played a whole hell of a lot, but I recommend it to people that like Silent Hill 2 originally. I think you will come away with something interesting here. It feels like oh, you can't ever remake Resident Evil 4, and then until you do it, and then you're like, oh wait, this actually is almost better. I think Resident Evil 4 is such an upgrade over the original in almost every way. Same for Resident Evil 2, and I would say that's even a better game than 4 in the remake kind of standard. And Resident Evil 2 and 4 on their own in their original formats are considered the best of their genre. The games as a whole aren't perfect or anything. I think the beginning of Resident Evil 2 is better than the back half, for instance. Just like I feel like with Dark Souls, just kind of keep it on track. All games throughout are not equal, but that's kind of the deal with the original as well. With the Resident Evil 2 on older consoles, the back half of the game isn't as strong as the police station stuff because, you're going to get more powerful, you're going to get those weapons, this and that. I don't know if there's going to be a similar sort of thing with Silent Hill 2 because, one, I can't speak to it having not played the original, really. That's the main thing. And second, I don't know what would be the difference. I kind of, between the two, having not played the original. But on its merits, on its values, contextually, I like it. I don't think I have to make too many qualifications to enjoy it. I just think I am enjoying it. Some people might have to go like, well, I have to be in the right mood, ready to do this, ready to roll. I don't think you have to be like that. You just have to be welcoming and for a slow-paced thing. But yeah, only an hour and a half in. I'll probably play more this weekend. I've kind of been traveling here back and forth, and I've been busy with some work stuff, family stuff. But yeah, Silent Hill 2 is something I'm going to definitely return to and come back to. So
cool. Yeah, I'll have to check it out at some point.
It's not it doesn't feel as pertinent. I would want you to probably play Metaphor over it, honestly, if I could recommend something.
Yeah.
Because I know you already like Persona, so Metaphor is kind of like right there.
Persona's pretty cool. They're a good game series.
Great. Yeah, and I think Metaphor is better in some ways. In some ways, not every.
Yeah, but sure.
Yeah, so you talked about Sonic Shadow Generations. I bought it based on your recommendation. Silent Hill 2. The next big thing that I kind of encountered, and you don't have access to this right now because you're playing on PC. Monster Hunter Wilds got put on.
Yeah, that open beta. Yep.
Yeah, open beta, and I think isn't it just PS5 only? I'm pretty sure that's what it is.
Yeah, right? PS5 only for now until we're recording this on the 30th. So 31st, it's gonna. Well, I should say right now you can go and download it, so I could go and pre-download it right now for tomorrow, but tomorrow evening around 10 our time I'll be able to get access to that game, so I don't know what I'll be doing then, but I might be on there, I don't know. So
well, from what I can tell, it's I guess it's not a demo. It doesn't feel like a demo. When it means beta, I don't. In practice, it feels like maybe a technical test. I don't know. It's really to get people familiar with like what kind of structure the game would be. As far as I can tell, it's chopped up into kind of two slices that are very short. One is just like a regular first monster hunt, What's the name of this thing? It's like this frog monster. It's like Katakana or something like it's something really fun. I forget what the name is.
It's not the
Monster.
Tetsuadora, is it?
No, I honestly, I would have to look at my gallery to see. I think I took a picture of it. But it's like this frog thing with like barbs on its tongue. It's pretty gnarly looking.
Oh, okay, that's different.
Yeah, it's
must be a new one.
Yeah, I think it is a new one. I don't know if they're actually promoting it with it. It doesn't seem like that big of a monster. It seems like one of those secondary monsters you kill en route to one at some point, which is kind of the flavor of these games. But kind of getting into it a little bit, it feels like Monster Hunter. It feels like the faster parts of Rise with the open world portions of World. It feels like a really good marriage of the two. I don't know the differences of this one compared to the other two. And I don't know quite the full structure of it yet. Is it fully open world? Is it only open zone? I'll kind of get into it a little bit, but the things that stood out to me initially, and I mentioned this to you in our kind of text thread, it's so seamless. It feels like a next-gen video game. So the game starts. I don't care about the story in a Monster Hunter game. Okay, that's just me. You're trying to find reasons to go hunt monsters. That's fine. There's this like desert tribe you're kind of hooking up with too. It's fine. It's whatever. I'm not interested at all in it. Almost zero. But in transitions from cutscene to gameplay is shocking. And I'm not talking like you're walking into a room or out of a room. It is like you are on this. There's these dragon mounts, basically. These little like bird dragon mounts. They kind of look like Boga from Star Wars 3. Like, Obi-Wan's like dragon mounts that he rides when he fights General Grievous. They look like those things, but like kind of miniature, little velociraptor types. They're called Sacrets, Secret, Sacrets. And you basically ride them like Palamutes and Rise.
Okay. Can you drift, though?
Actually, I don't know if you can. You probably
Drifting with the dog was very funny.
yeah, drifting was, but it felt really good. Really good. And I think technically it's a major step up from Rise.
Okay.
Not just visually, but like presentationally, it really launches you. You'll see it tomorrow. It really.
And just so we're clear, they got rid of that crappy Spear Bird mechanic where you had to run around and get your buffs from the map, right?
Yeah, as far as I can tell, it's not there. It's hard for me to tell because I'm using Insect Glaive, which is kind of hunting for buffs anyway.
Yeah.
But it's like environmental stuff. I couldn't see that. It's a very small portion of the game. I can't really speak to that being in it directly. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I guess it's the beginning is so bombastic. It's incredible what they do. Like you transition from cutscene gameplay where you're jumping onto a sacred and immediately it hits the gameplay like seamlessly. Like you're jumping, there's like a partial cutscene of you running, and then you take over. And it feels like you came right out of a cutscene in the gameplay, and it was flawless. I cannot tell you how well it seamlessly transitioned. I was like, oh nice. Crap, I'm playing now. And it really took me back for a Capcom game. Like, I'm not saying that to cast aspersions. Their games always look great, but in terms of like technical prowess, when it comes to like this sort of dynamic cutting, you don't think of their games doing that. Not really.
Let's unpack that a little bit. Let's talk about that. So, that dynamic experience of like the game being all one, conjoined experience. Do you think that's what we should be expecting now from AAA gaming, not just from Capcom, but from everyone? Because we were talking about that earlier with, I mentioned Bowser's Fury, right, from Super Mario 3D World. Sure. That was one whole big contained experience. No loading zones in that one. Shadow Generations took a little bit of a page out of that, but it still does have those transitions to, your big content, like your stages and your challenges are separate, loaded screens. But that's also a game built on top of a older game, right? Like a 360 game. So, are we expecting now new releases to have that sort of, interconnected world? Do you think that's a healthy thing to expect from AAA gaming?
Yeah. I think it's I think it's a better way to design an open world depending on what you're going for. Like I like that in the Bowser's Fury stuff.
Yeah.
There felt like wasted space. It all felt very considered, and that's why they built levels in the world and they kind of enjoyed them. That's what I loved about that.
It was a fantastic experience.
Yeah. It's one of the best Mario games. Just straight up. It could have released on its own, and people would not have complained. I don't think.
Yeah.
I don't know if they've gotten away with the price tag. That's probably why they threw it in with 3D World.
Right. Great tech demo, though.
Yeah. I felt like they had enough ideas for 3D World left over to put in this, so they kind of designed it from the jump to go like, hey, we're bundling this,
Yeah.
Because that game is not very long. That game is like a 4 or 5 hour game. Where to just go end it.
Like Shadow Generations.
Every time it took me like 10 hours, maybe, not even that. It was, honestly, it's probably like 8 or 9, if I'm completely honest with you. But yeah, I think it is an interesting way to design your game. It feels like it's more open than it actually is. Everything feels considered, designed, that sort of thing. And turning back to Monster Hunter a little bit, I'm not sure if this game is like that. If it is the open world where you're just going everywhere, or if it is the considered level back and forth, kind of seamless, interconnected open world kind of thing. I have no idea. But to answer your question, I think that is a great design choice for games to kind of innovate the open world genre. I think that could be really used well. And I think I've heard rumors of this, they're going to do this maybe in the new Resident Evil game, make it open world. I've heard this with Resident Evil 9, that they might make it slightly open world, if not open zones. And they kind of, like, you were talking about Shadow, you were talking about Bowser's Fury. The new Call of Duty has this a little bit. There is an open world mission where you're going kind of point to point, tagging targets, this and that. Very, very Metal Gear Solid 5, where it's a map, and you kind of choose your points to go in and out, and you can scout the area and stuff. So it's not full open world, but it's got enough open world flavorings. They can kind of design little mini levels that connect. I'm excited to play more of Monster Hunter. It doesn't come out till March.
Yeah.
I think it was March anyway.
I think it was April, actually. I think I saw April, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's next year. So it was good to get a taste of it. It feels like a Monster Hunter game in the best ways so far. Technically, it's kind of amazing. It was only 30 frames a second, I want to say, on console. I didn't see an option to change anything, so that might just be locked, or at least what they're shooting for. But again, it's a beta. Things can change when it comes to polish. I don't know how it's going to end up. But kind of like the TLDR, I think the dynamic cuts from cutscene to gameplay, kind of amazing, really. I was kind of shocked with, like, in media res, how it kind of picked up from cutscene into live gameplay, into a set piece even. And I don't know if the whole game is going to be considered that way, or if it's just like hey, we're beginning this game, this is the fun stuff, I don't know if we're going to have like an Uncharted set piece sort of thing all the time, or just like in story moments. I don't know. I would assume it's not all the time, because that's a lot of budget it would take. But in playing it, I played in Enclave, which is what I prefer. I love just being aerial, and it feels like how it did in Monster Hunter World and Rise. They have the 14 weapons they took from other things. I don't think they have any more. They might. But the 14 base weapons from both Rise and World are there, and they seem totally fine. I'm sure they've tweaked things. I want to know what the hook of this game is, though. Every game has a different hook. Mm-hmm. World was kind of just like, make Monster Hunter, but make it bigger and make it longer. Yeah. It's not Monster Hunter. It's Monster Hunter. We're spreading the field. We're making everything bigger, longer, faster.
Which, it was cool, but at the same time, it took forever to get anywhere. Yeah. Luckily, I was playing Lance for most of my time with that game, so I'd be just doing the charge move where you're sprinting full speed, and I'd get around the level using that move, because you could also jump pretty high while doing that charge, and so I was using that for mobility, just getting around the level to the monsters. So
right, and from what I see, them adding kind of a vehicle with Palamute in the last one, and then the Sacreds in this, it's expedited that, you moving around, because in Monster Hunter World it was a pain to get around. It was a major pain.
Yes.
And because those maps were huge. In the 3DS versions, like what you and I played, those open zones are smaller, and there's more climbing and jumping and more platforming almost. It's not like World. Like it feels like I don't know. It feels like they took the philosophy of those old portable games and stretched out too far, where you soon had a problem. Getting around.
I would say that those old portable games like 4 Ultimate Generations, even I went back and played 3 Ultimate recently on the Wii U as well, and those 3 games, I think I like those better than World and Rise. So I would say that out of those 5 that I just listed, Rise is probably the weakest entry for me, personally. And one of the sole reasons for that is not because of the map size. The map size is fine in Rise. It's those dang Spirit Birds. Having to go around, collect those every single mission just to get your buffs. It just gets repetitive. When I'm farming a monster, if I'm punching up trying to fight this monster so I can, get gear that is, really good gear, trying to grind this monster out. And it's a little bit tough for me, maybe I'm soloing it because I don't want to bother anyone else, with my grinding. It just takes forever to get all those dang Spirit Birds, but you gotta get them all because you're not going to be strong enough without those buffs, and so
for sure. That's
it's just a pain, and so between that mechanic and just the vastness of World, I prefer World's vastness over Rise's Spirit Bird collection simulator, but I'm hoping that Wilds figures out a way to have that massive world make you feel like you're a hunter in this world without the pain that comes with trying to traverse this world and finding these monsters, finding things to do, right? The thing with an open world game, you want to have a lot of things to do, you got to keep it interesting. Tears of the Kingdom, Breath of the Wild, they do a great job of that. Those are great open world games that do a great job with that. Something like Elden Ring, it here and there it's good at it, but there's still a lot of empty space that I feel like FromSoft doesn't utilize in that open space. And sometimes I feel like their older games, in fact I do believe that their older games are better than the offering of Elden Ring, just in terms of how much actual core gameplay you're getting per play session, right? Because you only have limited time in your day to play these games, right? And so
how much am I seeing, how much am I doing, how much space am I covering in your world, and what are you doing to make me look at and be invested in the things that you have set in front of me? That's the major issue I have. Not to get too off topic, since we are talking about Elden Ring slightly, I have a major problem with that DLC because there's not a lot of interesting things in it when it comes to just riding around. There's a lot of just
I got bored.
Around. Honestly,
I dropped the DLC because of the open world, not because of any. I didn't get stuck on any boss. I didn't. I just got bored of that open world. And I'm like, this isn't fun. I'm not having fun. I don't feel like just rushing to the next boss, because then I just feel like I'm cheating myself. So I just stopped playing it, and now I gotta pick that game back up so I can finish the DLC.
I don't know. I might
halfway through it.
One of those games I gotta get in the headspace for. I love Elden Ring. I beat that whole game in 4 or 5 days. I put 100 hours into that game. Love Elden Ring.
It's a great game.
It is. It is a great game. It is not my favorite of their games for sure. It's still towards the middle tier for sure. I mean, top. I think that just for that DLC specifically, I have a few major issues with it. One is the leveling system. I do not like it. It is an interesting experience, but you really have to start seeking out those special leveling pieces, or you're kind of boned. Their whole philosophy for it being an open world game, it doesn't serve the DLC nature of it when it comes to how are you encountering what we want to give you to fight. Bosses are all over the place, but why? It feels like this could have been just not linear, but it could have been more focused. It feels like it's not as focused.
Focus it in,
Yeah, and also, I'm not one to complain about difficulty. Those bosses are crushing. They are crushing. And like, depending on what you're doing, like, if you are not ready.
If you're not playing by the game's systems, using all of its systems, then that game is going to crush you. That's just kind of how the philosophy of the base game was. They just turned it up to 11 with that DLC by having those Erd Tree Shadow fragments. Yeah. Shadow Tree fragments, something like that. Whatever it was called.
I think it's called like Shadow Tree, something like that. But, in some ways they've made their games easier. In some ways they've made them harder.
Yeah, absolutely.
In terms of difficulty, it's ebbed and flowed. It's become more dynamic these days. Bosses are doing larger hit strings, larger damage volume, that sort of thing. But like the runbacks are almost like 0 to none as compared to like the old games. Like in Dark Souls, if you get killed in Sen's Fortress, like with that golem, you just got to run back from your next bonfire.
I mean, there's that nice little, like, if you go down to the Andre bonfire, there's that elevator that you can take up. So like if you're smart about it, then the runbacks aren't so bad, right? You just got to be a little bit smart about it sometimes, And I feel like you miss out a little bit on having the, just the thing right there. You don't even get to think about your strategy before you run back to it, You're just running right and charging at it, It's like that scene in Doctor Strange where he's like, I've come to make you a deal, and then he gets smashed. I've come to make you a deal with the big Dark Lord, whatever his name is. So I've come to bargain. I've come to bargain. Yeah. So it feels like that with Elden Ring sometimes. Like you don't even have a chance to chew on like what just happened. Why did I die? And I feel like those runbacks, those salty runbacks from older Souls games, they gave you time to cool your nerves, and chew on how you died and why you died. So I do think they did implement that into the learning curve of their older games for sure. And as you got better, you wouldn't have to run back as much. Yeah.
But there's less of the of the kind of resting points in the DLC than there is in the base game. So whenever you get to a boss room, they're just going to give you a Statue of America to kind of go, basically. And it's kind of just like, hey, you died, kind of try again.
Yeah.
And I've learned almost nothing, sometimes. And sometimes I'm like, oh, I got a little bit further this time,
Yeah.
It feels like that banging against your head. The ones that I don't like, Bloodborne had it really bad, where you would just straight up lose consumables, and you'd have
So you had to go farm those consumables, but you know what? You were thinking about what you were gonna do to that boss while you were farming those consumables, because gosh darn it, that boss made you go farm for your health potions,
And they fixed it. Okay, so they fixed it a little bit in the DLC. There's like a guy that's like hollering at a gate in the DLC, where if you kill him, you get 5 blood vials a pop.
Really? I don't remember that from the old Hunters. I also never ran out of blood vials in old Hunters. So
yeah, I only did a couple times. I think it was on Bloodwig, and he's right outside of Bloodwig's boss gate.
Yeah.
So you kind of just have to run through. He's like banging on it. He's like, "Argh!" And you kill him, and he gives you 5 a pop. So you kind of sit at the bonfire, do that, and rinse, repeat. It's not that. I do it 3 or 4 times. It's not horrible, but anyway, there's, in terms of open world structure, I like what Elden Ring does. I didn't like the DLC for a multitude of reasons. I will finish it one day.
Yeah.
It just feels like you have to play it on their terms, and
I don't like that either. Yeah, I'm someone who likes to go in there. So I tried Soul Level 1 on Elden Ring. I've done Soul Level 1 on all 3 of the Dark Souls games, and had a great time with that. On Elden Ring, I got about halfway through it. I got to like that, the Morgott in the big city. That Morgott, and I beat that Morgott, and then after that, I just didn't really. I think my last one on that was close to like Commander Niall or something like that.
I can see that
before going to the consecrated snow wastes or snowfield. And I did.
Yeah.
I tried the torch run as well, using just the torch because they removed the broken straight sword, and that also I ended around the same place of climbing down to Millennia, but I never actually got to Millennia because I just got burnt out.
Yeah, for sure.
Those games just feel like the Elden Ring just feels like you have to play with that game's rules, and that's just not for me as a long-time, player of these games. It alienates me a little bit. But if you do engage with those mechanics, then it's a reasonable game, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In terms of just like that open world structure, which is kind of how we got here in general, I'm interested to see what Wild is in comparison to Rise and World. I don't know how it's going to be.
Yeah.
My opinion is, it feels like they're gesturing at this, but I don't know if they want to fully go in this direction or not. But there's enough of this in their game. I wonder if they just do open world multiplayer game in Monster Hunter and they just make it that. Like, why don't they just do that? It feels like it's such a hassle to get people in there. Like, do they want to make a single player game or do they want to make a multiplayer game?
You're saying just go to the MMO formula and just have
basically
other players hunting things already, and you can just join them on there already.
And later, you're not playing that game single player the whole time. Like, especially towards the back half of it, when you finished everything by yourself, for the most part, you're trying to run it with people to get better gear and to finish higher ranking monsters. You kind of have to at a point when it comes to the really hard stuff. You have to run it with people because you're not going to do enough damage, and there's time limits. And I think that they should maybe gesture at that more because their multiplayer system is so borked. And I don't think it's better in this one. I really don't.
Yeah.
They have made it a little easier to make your fights feel like they're being cooperated upon. Like, for instance, you light a signal flare in Wilds, from what I can tell. And it's an open invitation to players to join you. Until that happens, you will have an NPC follow you around fighting these monsters. And whenever someone needs to get in, those NPCs will bow out. And another person can kind of insert themselves, which is a cool kind of thing. Yeah, it's cool.
It's different.
Yeah, it's different. It's definitely different. But it feels like that multiplayer craft they need to get away from, like the very solo queue sort of thing. Like, hey, I'm looking for a room. They need to make it more. I just truly believe that, and I feel like that with Dark Souls games too. Like, just matchmake and go. You don't need to have all the dance.
Let's go on a little bit of tangent here real quick because I just remembered something. So they had that. I don't know if it's still going on or if it's over, but they had that Nintendo Network test. Did you hear about that?
I did hear about this, and I wanted to bring it up in odds and ends, but since we're on the topic, I don't know. Since we're on the topic, by all means, since we're talking about open world cooperation, multiplayer settings, that's kind of what the game is. So
yes.
Is there a name of it, or is it just like network test? Is that what they just called it?
They were calling it network test. Yeah, I read the design document for the thing a couple weeks ago because it got leaked, and so I read that leaked design document, and it was pretty interesting. So yeah, I wanted to bring that up because it sounds like Nintendo is trying to do something in that MMO space. Because that game is like an MMO, sort of a user-generated content building game. You can build things, and I don't know if it's a good idea to let players just build things, whatever they want. Essentially, I don't know how the extent of what you can build in this game, but. Yeah. They had some sort of reporting system, but that didn't exactly work out too well for Miiverse, so we'll see how this goes.
Yeah, so what I've heard, this is from a show. It's called Mythic Quest. It's on Apple. But there is a term they use, and it might be just from video games in general. It's called time to dick. How quickly do people make dicks in your video games?
Yeah.
And it's going to be pretty fast in a user-generated game.
Yeah.
And I think that this is going to be a problem if they're going to allow people to just freely design things,
Yeah.
So they've never done anything like this before.
Yeah, this is a limited network test, so like maybe maybe this is not going to be have that much of an issue like that in something like this. Maybe they'll be able to control it a little bit better. We'll see.
Right. Yeah, it's invite only. It's only for a amount of people for a limited time, but it is definitely a network test for a video game. They are making a video game.
Yeah, and I think we know partly what that game could be.
Yeah, for sure. So the developers are EPD4, as far as I understand, which is they are Once You Switch, the original. They are Ring Fit Adventure. All the weird games, like there's some random stuff they've done too. Just the experimental stuff, that's what this team does. And they're the smaller scale, smaller budget titles that, either get kind of crapped out or kind of, they're not shovelware, but they're like kind of shovelware in the way where like Ring Fit Adventure is the tech demo kind of for their band. It's an exercise feature, whatever.
Yeah.
For all a good game, and it actually does, count calories and stuff, which is cool.
Yeah.
But they're very experimental as a studio, and I don't know if this is going to be incorporated with the service. Like, if you pay for the service, Nintendo Online, do you just get this? Like straight up. You just get this with it because you kind of have to have an account to even do it if you're invited. From what I can hear.
Yep, you do. Yep.
Yeah. Do they just tie that and make it a perk, or is this going to be a part of a bigger thing that is a new IP? I wonder.
I don't even think this is going to be something that they bring back, to be honest. I think they're just using this small little tech demo to test their own network, because they have a history of having a pretty bad network.
Very archaic.
You can't really play those Smash Bros games online and expect to have a in-person experience, right? They don't know what a rollback netcode is, so
I mean, honestly, like if they put rollback into Ultimate, it would be a godsend. It would be amazing.
It would help a little bit, but I don't even think it would solve all of its issues, because the network that it's running off of is just really archaic. Like, they still have some 98 machines, I think, that they're running on. So
really, I mean, rollback just a fail-safe mechanism primarily. Like in terms of actual performance, it's not going to help, but it's going to make playing a bit better. Just if something hitches up kind of dramatically. But I think this is just my personal take. I think they will do something with this. There's enough art in this thing. There's enough mechanical interest. There's enough, it feels like a pet project. It does. It feels like a small scale thing. It feels like enough has gone into it. It has to be a thing.
Yeah.
I don't know what form this takes. If it's its own thing or if it gets incorporated into something else. Nintendo's always patenting things. It's always making new ideas. It's making weird projects like Alarmo and Labo and this sort of thing. This feels like a toy game. This feels like a toy to me, like an interactive toy.
Sure. They like
or
that.
Or a building simulator. I don't know exactly what they're going for. I've seen gameplay of it. Like there's like this grappling hook mechanic where you're kind of like this monkey person, kind of attaching yourself to anything that you can attach to, basically, and kind of swinging around building stuff.
Okay.
Think of it like, oh man, you're like this monkey where there's like, you're making a hub, basically. It's like, think of it as like a light projected down, and you are building inside the cone of the light. Anything outside it seems like a void of space or something. But in this cone, your personal cone, you are building. And it feels like you can build out, and you can see in the distance in the footage that I've seen, other people building their cones.
In their cones, yeah.
Little hubs.
Okay.
And I think it might be like we were talking about, an open world thing where people are building worlds to interconnect. Yeah. Which is really, I think that is a very cool idea.
Yeah.
User generated stuff like that. I don't know what form it takes. I have no clue, but it is interesting enough, and it feels like there's enough going on in it. I feel like they're going to do something with it. When that happens, I have no clue. This doesn't seem like a finished video game.
Yeah.
If anything, it might be a later in the generation title, and we'd go like, oh, that's what that tech test was for. It was put into, I don't know. Maybe they're just going to release something like this and just go like, hey, we gave you a bunch of tools, go wild. We're not going to really name this thing. I don't know. I really don't know. But yeah, it's totally fascinating.
Yeah, so I've got a little bit of a take on it just from things that I've been piecing together from like rumors and leaks and things like that. So,
Yeah.
Back onto that Pokemon leak. I heard some other information on it, and I haven't dug too deep into that leak, like into the documents on that or anything like that. But I've heard down the rumorville grapevine, whatever, that there was also some things pointing to them wanting to possibly go with an MMO format for Generation 10.
That's the way Pokemon needs to go. I think
yeah. And so maybe this could roll into being some sort of tech demo for that Gen 10 Pokemon game on Switch 2. And they're just testing out their network, testing out, their code and things like that for that connectability. And, I mean, going that MMO route with Pokemon, that is the way to go, right? Like, people have been saying it for years. People have been saying it pretty much since WoW came out, all the way back, maybe like, when was that WoW? Like 2004? Like, people have been saying, Pokemon should do this, for a long time. So, I mean...
I get what you mean. I feel like this is a Nintendo test, right?
Yeah.
I don't know in what capacity they would help Game Freak implement something like this. It feels like a server load thing. It feels like maybe they rig something up, like make this is a construct, right? They're just like throwing this up, going like, hey, can we implement these ideas in something else, but can we have kind of like this facade built up to test this load, how this works, how it integrates with people's experiences.
Yeah.
Can we like take a fake game and implement what we learned into a real one? Like maybe that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
I don't know. But there's no direct Game Freak involvement in this as far as I can tell. But I'm not ruling it out. I think that would be interesting.
And maybe MMO just becomes like a core strategy of the Switch 2. Maybe a lot of Switch 2 games come out and they are just these big MMO experiences, or big, content, user-generated content platforms. They see what Fortnite's doing, they see what Roblox is doing, they see what, Minecraft is doing, and they're like, we want a piece of that pie of user-generated content. Kids go crazy for this stuff. Our market is kids, and so, maybe they want a piece of that user-generated content pie, and so that's what they're going for, and that could be a core strategy we see with Switch 2 is, hey kids, you can do user-generated content, all your favorite content creators are here, generating content,
Like, if that's the case, how do they monetize? Like, how do they roll it out to people? How do they make it legible for people to understand and to put their hands on it? Nintendo is one of the best translators of concept to practice that there is. Like, in terms of an idea, they are the best translators of their ideas ever. Like, they really understand what it takes to communicate to a player what they want done and what they want, illustrated. And I think that they would have an issue not showing people how things work, but kind of understanding it themselves. So I wonder if this is kind of a litmus test for themselves to kind of get their network stuff under, a better reign, I guess.
Yeah.
Because things are so old and archaic for so long. Maybe they're trying to challenge themselves to go like, hey, how do people respond to what we built? How do we understand what we built and make it better and kind of get out of the Stone Ages almost, like with the world of friend codes and weird interconnected phone apps for your games and stuff. Like, come a little bit to the real world, Nintendo, like a little bit, Maybe this is the first step of that in a weird Nintendo-ish way.
Mm-hmm. Like Beavers.
And I can kind of segue into something that happened today. Like, they put out Nintendo Spotify.
It's got like 5 game soundtracks in it, maybe 10 game soundtracks.
It's not a lot, but it's very similar to like what their network test is. It requires your Nintendo account. It is just a perk with the subscription.
Yeah,
they're just threw it in there, and it's sparse, to be completely honest with you. I mean, there's a small selection. Like, if you like Animal Crossing, you are good. You know, like, if you like Mario Odyssey, they have every song there. Like, it is a perk with their membership for sure.
Yeah.
I kind of dug into it for the last couple hours just to see what it was. I was just like, what the hell
is this? I dug into it for a few hours as well today.
I was driving from work, and I was going like, Nintendo Music? What are they doing? Like, what is this? And I pulled it up, like, as I got home. I was like, they just made Nintendo Spotify so they pay licensing fees to put their music on streaming services.
Yeah.
Which is smart because Nintendo wants that money, you know.
Yeah.
The ears, the eyeballs. It's just interesting. They go like, we'd rather not. We'll just make our own thing. And it's bare bones. It's sparse. It's, you know, very compact in terms of just like how many offerings it has. What is interesting is your played games. It's reflected on the, like, basically they're seeing something in your account saying you played a game. It says your games, like, these are the games that you have played. Here's some music. Like, It's kind of crazy. Yeah, like, for instance, I think, like, Kirby's Adventure was on there. I'm like, oh, I played Kirby's Adventure on my account. They're like, yeah, we know. Here's some music.
We know. We saw you do it. We watched you while you were playing it.
We watched you. Miyamoto was looking through his spot.
Yeah, we saw you die on level 1 in the Kirby game. Buddy, listen to some music. It'll make you feel better.
I mean, it's very odd. It's just an odd rollout. Like, Nintendo's been doing weird stuff lately, like super weird stuff. It feels like the end of a generation, but like a weird segue into a new one. It feels like they're getting all the weird stuff out of the way before they go like, "Hey, baby, we got a Switch 2 for you. Come buy it." You know, they're like, we got an alarm clock. You know, we're gonna put that out. Whatever. We got Nintendo Spotify. We'll put that out too. We're gonna release Xenoblade Chronicles X. Nobody cares about that. Blah, blah, blah.
Whoa! I think we care a little bit about that.
Okay,
it's like the only interesting one.
Also, not to make this a Nintendo show.
Whoa! When did it become a Nintendo show? We talked about Silent Hill 2. We talked about Shadow Generations. We talked about Monster Hunter Wilds. We talked a lot about FromSoft. I don't think it's a Nintendo show.
They have been on the brain. Like, Nintendo's been kind of moving and shaking in odd ways, but they're just like putting things out. Yeah. They're going like, we have an alarm clock. Buy it. We're releasing this old Wii U game. Maybe check it out next year. And people were like, oh, okay, yeah, I was holding on to my Wii U because of this, you know. And now all that's left is those Zelda remasters, you know. So maybe they actually get that out of the way. It's kind of encouraging to me. I go like, they might just do that. They might just do it at the very, very, very end. Put those out. But yeah, Nintendo's been doing some wild stuff lately. Nintendo Spotify might be the weirdest. It's good.
I don't know. I think the Larmo is a little bit weirdo. Yeah,
that is.
It's weirder.
It's like it feels like Nintendo being like, "Hey, we made a toy like Labo." You know, It's super not for me. I am not a child.
No, I don't. I have an alarm clock. I don't need the Nintendo one. I don't need Wario yelling at me like "Wah!" or whatever, you know.
It is time to wake up. Like, no,
yeah,
I don't need it. Like, I have a set regimen. I have my phone. I'm an adult. I don't need it, don't want it. Who are they making it for? That's really what I want to know. Yeah. Are they just creative folks that want to do things creatively? It's so cool, whatever. But yeah, just weird tchotchkes, weird things that they just do. Just from time to time, like they just get like an itch to go like, we have to make something physical. Like, oh my god, we have to make cardboard.
Miyamoto is going to die if we don't release a physical product within the next financial quarter.
We have to make Mario Kart real. Put them in actual go-kart. Use Switch. Like,
that was kind of a cool concept.
Yeah, that's cool. I do like that. But it's so weird.
It's very weird. It's a toy.
We have to engage our minds and make something physical, and that's what, like, they're very whimsical that way. They're very odd. Nintendo has that weirdness to them that I kind of like. You never really know what they're gonna do. You think it's gonna be one thing. Like, people thought this technical test was GameCube stuff. Like, they thought it might be like, because there was a large download. It was like 2 gigs, something like that. And they're like, well, what could this be? Is this like a streaming cloud thing for your GameCube games, or is it like a, platform to download them to your Switch? Like, what is this? People didn't know what it was. They were kind of extrapolating, whatever. But I don't know. It's just they get a kind of wild hair up their rear end. They just go like, we got to make something crazy, man. Like, I don't know. We gotta exercise the Japanese demons in us. These yokai are. So, but yeah, that's some wild stuff. Nintendo Spotify came out. It's good. You guys should check it out. Whatever.
Yeah, it's got that. It's got one Game Boy Advance soundtrack on it, the Fire Emblem Binding Blade soundtrack. So,
Blade, yeah. Good soundtrack. It's not bad. But I think the Game Boy Advance soundtrack's not great, but the Switch really gives you the mileage out of those old cartridges. You're like, oh, this is how it should have sounded, Like when you play it on a Game Boy Advance, you're like, this doesn't sound that good at all. But, the emulated versions of it are okay, but yeah, that's basically Nintendo. So there's a couple other things for new stuff. I played a little bit more of Metaphor, a little bit, not a lot. I just kind of finished the first dungeon. I really liked it. I beat the kind of end boss of that very easy. I feel like I kind of like leveled myself out of that first area very quickly, because there's like when you get to the main hub, there's that calendar period where you're like, oh, attack this dungeon, do it day by day, whatever, do your social links in between. There's like a 10-day calendar clock, whatever you want to call it, just kind of like a countdown to, hey, you need to do this or things are going to be real bad, and there's like an optional dungeon you can go do, and I was like, I'll go do it. And you buy items along the way, kind of. It's very linear, front to back, end to end. I do the whole thing. There's like an optional monster in it. I get like crazy levels, like over level. I get way over level, and then I just smoke the dungeon when I return, like the main dungeon. I was just like, is the whole game going to be this? Like, I wonder if they're going to have different avenues for like leveling and grinding and stuff to make things easier. I wonder, but I played another hour of it. It's still good. It's still good. I really like it. It feels like it hasn't started yet. I'm going to be real. Like, I'm 11 hours in. I was 10 hours in last week.
Yeah, that's kind of the heck of it with modern JRPGs, right? Especially those, Persona games. Those games that are like Persona. You're like, I'm 10 hours into this. Has the game started yet? No.
Yeah.
Okay.
No. Yeah, and so something I have checked on since our last meeting, it was the relationship aspect to the characters. There is no romance options. It is straight platonic. Every character, you are just being companions in a party. It is not. There's no romantic interest at all. Even for people not in your party, they totally took it out, which is interesting.
It's not a dating sim.
Yeah. I feel more mature. It does. It's a very different thing.
Yeah.
But I respect them for it. They went like, yeah, maybe we lean too hard in some aspects, and they kind of get away from the weird stuff by doing that. They go like, we're just going to make a story happen,
Yeah.
But it feels like the bones of those relationship systems are there without the romance, which is interesting. Good. So I will play more Metaphor. I haven't felt like terribly in the mood for it because like there's a lot going on in it. I feel like I kind of really have to meet it where it's at. And I haven't been in the headspace to really attack it. The thing I have played most this week, and I finished actually, is Alan Wake 2's DLC, The Lake, which is really good. I love Alan Wake 2 already. I have a running list of the top games. It is top 15 for me all time. Like presentationally, mechanically, I think it is some of the most daring stuff people have made in the medium. It is completely arresting. 100% worth your time. I think it is completely double-stopping what they do technically in this game. Just for people that don't know Alan Wake 2, it's a sequel to Alan Wake, obviously. It is a very different game from the original Alan Wake. It feels like an evolution of Remedy as a studio more than a sequel to Alan Wake. When it comes to story, it kind of picks up right where that one left off. But Alan Wake 2 is so much more dynamic. Like, with so much more. If people haven't played their other stuff, they're the team that made Max Payne 1 and 2, not 3. Rockstar actually made 3, but they were under the Rockstar publishing for 1 and 2. which are excellent, excellent games and hold up. Actually, I played a little bit of Max Payne 2 this week, and it's still a banger. It's so good. Like, the combat is still good. It is that original game. It still feels good. It's kind of amazing that it's still test time like that. But yeah, Remedy, top to bottom, really interesting studio. Control is one of the best games of this past generation.
That's a good game.
Think of it like, yeah. Have you finished it, actually?
I never got around to finishing it, no. I've booted it up a few times, and I've done, like, the beginning parts of it, and it was really interesting for when I played, but I just couldn't get into the flow of it. I liked the ideas in it. I thought it was interesting. I couldn't get into the flow of it. Yeah.
Yeah. It feels like the first real launch of their house style in terms of like vibes. Like it feels like in some ways Alan Wake 2 is like the ultimate pinnacle of this so far. It feels like an FMV concept album video game almost. Like it's a million media properties kind of thrown together and put into a video game you can play.
Yeah.
It's really stuff. I think the things they do with music, especially in Alan Wake 2 and in Control even, are real standouts. There's the Ashtray Maze in Control that is maybe the best set piece of the game, where you are basically in a looping maze until you can kind of find your way through with this like soundtrack. It's really cool. It's a dynamic soundtrack that changes as you navigate the level in Control. And Alan Wake 2 has that too, with this place, this song called is it called Champion of Light or something like that? But it's another musical set piece that is part FMV, like full motion video, people in the game as projections, like actual human.
Yeah.
Mixed and spliced with actual gameplay, and the entire, you wouldn't think it would work because a real person juxtaposed to a video game character, it looks off. But the ways they kind of integrate it all, super work, which is fascinating to me. Like every bit of the style is cohesive in Alan Wake 2. I feel like parts of Control weren't as cohesive. It feels like they were trying to get their footing with what they wanted to make. And then Alan Wake 2 is like a solid smack it in the face. Like, hey, we know the game we want to make. We want to make it dynamic. We want to make a concept album. We want to make a video game first. It's just Alan Wake 2. I could say so much about it. Like, it is one of the best games I've ever played.
Nice.
I was really excited about this DLC. They put out 2. There's like this Night Springs DLC, which is kind of like a what if scenario. It feels like a episode of the Twilight Zone. It's broken up to 3 parts, that first one, and it's kind of like a more lighthearted, fun stuff take on the Alan Wake universe. It's really interesting. I haven't finished that. The real one I wanted to jump into is this Lake House stuff, which is not a branch off of the main game, Alan Wake 2. It's kind of like a side story that was happening concurrently with, just like Shadow Generation sort of thing. It's happening in tandem. It's not very long. It's like 2 hours, really, 2-3 hours. I did everything in it. It's not a long game to finish. And they show you basically everything you can pick up, collectibles, whatever. For what it's worth, I got all the trophies. It's not hard to do. But in terms of like, is it as good as the main game? It's more of Alan Wake 2. If you liked Alan Wake 2, you're going to like the DLC. It kind of there's this governmental organization called the FBC, the Federal Bureau of Control, and they're in Alan Wake and in Control. They are a shared universe with shared characters, shared ideas. There's Control personnel in Alan Wake 2. There's Alan Wake as a character and his story in Control as DLC. So they kind of talk to each other back and forth in different iterations. And this is kind of more of that, where the Federal Bureau of Control is investigating part of Bright Falls, Alan Wake 2 setting, and finding out what was going on with this government black site that is located in the lake, where everything basically bad comes out of. Everything in Alan Wake 2, every bad thing comes out of this kind of rotten lake, like all these evil creatures and stuff. And it's very short. I don't think the story's like amazing or anything, but like the vibes are still immaculate. It's so dynamic. It has a really great weapon called the Black Rock grenade launcher or something like that. It's one of the best guns I've shot in the game in a long time. It was very exhilarating to do. Really good sound design. I think the sound design is top notch in the original game, Alan Wake 2. But in here, it feels I don't know. It's been a while since I played through Alan Wake 2. I remember it being really really good with the binaural audio because I was wearing headphones. Like you feel it like around you. It's really good for that. But this one feels like kicked up a notch. It feels very like in your face. It feels like it could be in the room with you damn near. So, Lake House really good. Story wise, I think it's okay. You're really there for more Alan Wake 2. The main character is a agent that you encounter in the original game, Alan Wake 2. Her name is Kieran Estevez. Really good performance and character, but it feels like kind of leading into bigger and better things. It feels like Alan Wake 3 is going to happen after Control 2, and you're going to get more from her, and maybe even more in Control 2. But they remark about in the game, in the DLC, they remark about Control, the events in that. They go like, the FBC headquarters, the oldest house in New York, shut down 4 years ago. No one knows what happened. Where are we getting our orders from? This and that. Because basically, Control, when you start that game, like everything kind of goes topsy-turvy. Because you're trying to find your brother and this and that. There's a little cameo from the brother from Control in this Lake House DLC. So it feels like the MCU of weird sci-fi X-Files. It's great. I think you should play it. I don't know if you would play the first one and then Alan Wake 2 and you get... I don't know if you could play Alan Wake 2 by itself without having played first Alan Wake. But I think Alan Wake 2 alone is so worth it, Yeah. The Lake House is just more of it. I really enjoyed it. So, yeah, start to finish, about 2 hours of that this past weekend. And, really liked it. I bought the deluxe version. It had everything. So, it even had the original suit for Alan Wake from first game. So, that's cool. But as for new stuff, that's kind of what I've got. Any other new stuff that you've played besides Sonic and Shadow?
New release stuff. I can't think of anything off the top of my head that I've messed around with.
Yeah, that's fine. That was actually a lot of new video games, though. I mean, those are a lot of new releases. We kind of covered a lot of them. So,
yeah,
ends a little bit of other stuff that aren't as new that you kind of wanted to talk about. Talk to me about 100% orange juice. What the hell is that?
All right, so 100% orange juice. It's a 4-player online party game, and it's a card collector.
Oh, I like that.
So what you do is you have a deck of, I believe it's 10 cards. Yeah, 10 cards. And you form this deck of 10 cards, and your opponents form a deck of 10 cards. Then all the cards that each of you picked are shuffled into one deck of cards.
Oh.
Yeah. So you all pick 10 and there's like a ton of different cards in the game. They add they add like a pack of like 6 new cards every year or so. The game's been around for a long time, for like at least 5 years, if not longer. Probably around 10 years, close to that. But it's they just keep supporting it, keep updating it slowly, adding new characters and content. But
you're playing on Steam?
Yeah, it's a Steam only game. So
okay.
Yep. And
I've never heard of it.
Yeah, it's a little bit niche, but
yeah,
it's a really fun party game with friends. It's got like just cutesy little anime characters that are in from the publishing company, Fruit Bat Factory. It's their sort of IP, their characters. They put them all into this one party game, and most of their games are shooters, like top-down shooters, or like side-scrolling shooters, and stuff like that. So just simple shooters. That's most of their games. So, yeah. So it's just a fun little party game that I play with my group, and I've been playing it for years now, on and off. But I got it back when I was in high school, actually. So I mean, the game has been out forever, and so yeah. So it's an old game, but they still support it. Yeah, it's fun. So yeah, you all shuffle your cards into the same deck, and then there are sort of blank cards that, if you draw them, they turn into your character's hyper card. And each character has their own separate hyper card that, along with the sort of stat block that your character has for attack and defense and recovering from getting KO'd, and the blurb of text of what unique effects your character has, which can be anything from nothing at all to like a paragraph of text, depending on the character. So you have that, and then you have the complexity of the hypers, and then you have the complexity of what do you put into your pile of cards that everyone's sharing. You know, do you put stuff that helps your character? Do you put stuff that, you know, hates on other characters' play styles? You know, you can put, you know, whatever you want in there, essentially. And so it's interesting. It's interesting having the shared deck, and you're not guaranteed to draw cards either. There's spaces that you land on to draw cards, and it's not minigame based like a lot of party games. There are a couple of minigames in there. There's single player minigames that can be turned on, and every so often a lot of spaces will be turned into single player minigame spaces. And then there's a fishing minigame that's a multiplayer fishing minigame.
Oh, wow.
And and that one can be turned on as well as an event that happens like every 10 or 15 or so turns. And so your goal is just to collect enough stars or get enough wins, either by knocking out enemies from encounter spaces or knocking out other players. And so there's varying play styles, varying, you know, win conditions. There's just the two win conditions of stars and wins, but the way you achieve those is very different depending on what character you're playing. So there's, you know, different classes of characters you can categorize things into. You know, there's your attackers, there's your defenders, there's your star collectors, there's your evaders, there's your you know, trap characters, there's your you know, just oddball, you know, characters that don't do any of those things. Maybe they counter another strategy, you know. So it's interesting. There's a huge cast of characters, maybe like 50 characters, and so I've never even played with every single character, and I've been playing the game for years. So you just kind of find play styles and characters you like, and just stick to them, and you know, it's fun.
Yeah. What's the developer name of 100% Orange?
Fruit Bat Factory is the publisher. Yeah, I think that's the developer as well.
Okay, so they self-published. Okay,
yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I love card games so much. Like, it's kind of segueing a little bit. I played a little bit more Balatro. I beat it, since we talked, 3 more times with different decks. And
yeah.
This is probably going to be my game of the year. It's just, I just adore that game. It is one of the most playable things you can touch. But yeah, 100% Orange Juice. I will definitely check that out. Before you get into more multiplayer gaming,
yeah.
I kind of wanted to talk about a small Switch game. It's another odd and end. Excuse me. It's Gunbrella. Have you heard of Gunbrella?
No.
It's by Doinksoft. They did Gato Roboto, if you remember that.
Nope.
It's a Metroidvania where you play as a little cat. Gato Roboto is a really fun game. You should play it. Anyway, it's like a monochrome sort of kind of search action game. It's really interesting. But Gunbrella is really good, really cool. It's super cheap too. I think it's like $25 on Switch. I think I bought it for cheaper than that even on a sale. But yeah, it doesn't seem like it's too long. It's like 6 hours, something like that. But you're basically this guy. You kind of have like a cowboy hat or a top hat or something like that, and you have this umbrella that's a gun, or a gun that's an umbrella, whatever you want to say. Your wife gets brutally murdered, like in your house while you're either I forget what the setup was, like you're tied up, you're asleep, or something like that. I don't know. She ends up. Yeah, no. He returns. Yeah, it's a huge
real mood killer.
Probably a wife guy. You know what I mean? Yeah, ultimate wife guy.
Yeah.
Comes back to his cabin, she's slaughtered, whatever, and there's a
gun
left. And you're breaking my concentration.
It's just such a weird concept to me. I'm sorry, like it's throwing me off. Like the setup is that your wife died for a gun umbrella game. Like I was thinking of the Gunbrella from Splatoon, you know, and I'm thinking of like, yeah, that was a fun weapon. I used to use it a lot. You know, you'd have the umbrella for shielding you from ink, and then you could shoot out, you know, ink while you're shielding. You know, I used the undercover version a lot, so I could shoot while the regular version couldn't do that, but the undercover version could do that. So I'm just picturing this, and then all of a sudden you mention the dude's wife getting killed. So I'm like, man, that's a real mood killer. That's a bummer.
Yeah, his wife is very dead, and he's trying to figure out who did it. And there's a gun left to escape the crime, and he basically uses it to enact his revenge. It's a very cutesy game.
Yeah.
Side-scrolling, kind of platformer-ish game. The presentation's really good. I like the music. The story is kind of whatever. It's not a short game. It doesn't feel like you're going to be, you know, experiencing that much of it. It's a very short stop and a long journey of gaming, you know. But Gunbrella's good. It's got a really good traversal mechanic where you're using the umbrella to kind of like zip glide places, and it's kind of a grapple hook on kind of lines. Think of them like kind of like rappel lines and stuff.
Okay.
It's fun. It's kind of hard. There's some hard bosses in it. It's got a nice twist though. There's like it's very Bloodborne-y. It's like Call of Cthulhu-esque, where you're fighting like these, you know, ritual sacrifice beings. That this cult is the cult is called the Cult 45, like a gun, which is interesting. Like Cult.
Yep.
And they're sacrificing people for like these abominations that are named after like the like brother, sister, mother. That they're these weird meatball creatures that are being fed spirits and coming to life. Kind of weird bosses and stuff. I don't know when I'll finish it. It's kind of this game I'm kind of chipping away at. It's not. I could finish it if I really wanted to, but when I see my Switch there and I go like, I'm not playing anything else, I'm gonna just kind of pick up the Gunbrella and play it. It's fun for that, you know. So yeah. Gunbrella, a little small thing. And I mentioned also, in talking about Remedy, I played some Max Payne 2. I'm trying to finish that up because I really like that game. It's a old game. It's like, what is that, 2005 or 6 or something like that? Maybe even older than that. It was on PS2 and Xbox originally. And, yeah, they put the remaster out on, well, the one I'm playing is an up-res version for Xbox. I'm playing on Xbox Series. But they basically just, with the new Xbox consoles, they've kind of gussied them up to make them run better, but to keep the core gameplay. So they're not remaking anything. All the old games just run better, sound better, you know, play better. They make them more playable by kind of doing some light touch remaster work. And Max Payne 2 is one of those games. So if you're looking for a good time to kind of like, you know, kill a few hours, Max Payne 1 and 2 are really excellent games for sure. Nice. And I'm just a big Remedy as a studio, so I think it's definitely worth playing. But yeah, you have another multiplayer thing you want to talk about. Go for it.
Yeah, before we go into that, what genre was that Gunbrella game again? What genre did you say that was? Like, was that a Metroidvania? Was that a?
It's like a side-scrolling platformer. Yeah.
Okay, side-scrolling platformer. Okay, because you mentioned their previous work, that Cat Metroidvania or whatever that you were talking about.
Yeah, that's more of a Metroid style game. And Gunbrella seems very like left to right, kind of linear sort of.
Yeah,
but yeah, If I didn't say that, yeah, that's kind of what we're looking at.
Yeah, we got a little bit. I got a little bit distracted in my head on the Gunbrella portion. So,
we all
you mentioned Metroidvania. One that I'll want to talk about eventually when we do talk about Metroidvanias. One that's near and dear to my heart is Touhou Luna Nights. You play as you play as Sakuya, the maid of the Scarlet Devil household, the mansion, she has like the time stop powers and stuff, and so you go through this game and like it's like a copy of the world, so like her powers are like limited in this copy of the world, and so it's pretty it's a pretty fun game. I would say it might even be my favorite Metroidvania, so I had a lot of fun when I played through. I'm not a big fan of the Metroidvania genre in general, so
okay, I see it. Touhou Luna Nights. It's on sale actually. Should I get it?
Yeah, I mean, if you love Metroidvanias, that's one that I can always recommend, because
I do love Metroidvanias.
It's a good romp. It's not too long. It took me maybe 10-15 hours to complete it fully, so doesn't waste your time. Great soundtrack. It's got that great Touhou soundtrack, and
cool. So is series like Touhou is a series?
Touhou is a series of top-down shooters made by Zune, and they're all sort of in that Creative Commons license, to where if you want to go out and make your own Touhou game, you're pretty much free to just use those Touhou characters and go make your own game. Like, the creator Zune, I'm pretty sure he doesn't care what you do with his characters, as long as it's nothing too crazy. So you can just use those characters, and so this is essentially a fan game in that universe, but it's a really well put together offering.
Interesting.
And a lot of Touhou fan games are like that. Like, they're just really good games because they aren't tied down by trying to come up with a story, come up with a scenario, at least come up with the world building, and come up with the characters and come up with the music. They can borrow a lot of that from the Touhou series, and then they can just implement a good game, on top of those things that are already there for them. And so it's kind of what happens here with Touhou Luna Nights, I think, is that they knew how to make a good Metroidvania, and so they just used this IP that was already out there and free to use, and worked off that, and it's a great experience, great time, so a lot of fun.
Basically, they made the game and flavored it with like this kind of IP, basically.
Yeah. Yep.
Interesting. Super cool. I've never heard of an IP being used in like a public domain.
Yeah,
sort of.
It's essentially a public domain IP. Yeah, that's what Touhou is.
Super, yeah, I'd be interested to see more games do something like that. To go like, hey, take a crack at our IP, see what you can make.
Yeah, Touhou's been around forever.
Yeah, it feels the closest thing I can think of that feels that way is Warhammer 40K.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they just have like a million studios use their license.
Yeah,
they go like, hey, just whatever, make a game. We'll give us the licensing fee money, and we'll go from there.
So what we're saying here on the Stick Drift podcast is that Touhou is Japanese Warhammer. So you can quote us on that.
I did say.
The little girl shooter is the same thing as Warhammer for all of our Warhammer fans out there. I'm sure they're gonna love hearing that.
Well, I would play Warhammer 40K 2 at some point. I will talk about it. I want to kind of finish it before I really dive in, because it's a short game. But yeah, Warhammer's been on the brain for me anyway.
Yeah.
But to finish off my like small little odds and ends real quick before you get into your last two or three, I play this just like a little bit. I kind of checked in with Lego Star Wars 3. I was just like looking for something to kind of rock with. I like Lego Star Wars. I like Lego games. Lego's fun. It's just an accessible way to touch IP.
Yeah.
Star Wars is one of my favorite things. It was in a past life. The thing. that I love the most. And Lego Star Wars 3, it's a weird thing where it's covering the Clone Wars series. And I kind of want to get into this maybe in a crash course where it's not covering the entire breadth of the Clone Wars experience because, they made the game and they only have, 2 seasons out of the show, so it's covering a handful of episodes, which is kind of a bummer. I like it when things are finished, like they have these sets of movies for Star Wars and they just adapt them in the Lego format. And you have every single movie, like that's what the Skywalker saga is, They go like, hey, all 9 movies, bing, bang, boom, and we have DLC for the offshoots. Go for it. It has basically everything. But I have some issues when it comes to the older Lego stuff where they are not adapting the full source material that they are trying to make games of. Like, and I really want to go into it in a crash course, probably. I think I probably will. Where they have Lego games that are just unfinished recreations of their counterparts of their show. Because Clone Wars was up to only season 2 or 3. They only did like episode 7 of the movies for like a game. They didn't make 8 or 9 as their own thing until Skywalker Saga, as their own standalone game. And it kind of like stretched out even that 7 game for a long time to go like, hey, we have to kind of just like stretch this because they want a whole game to coincide with this release of this movie. It's just weird. It's super weird that they would do that. The thing that bugs me the most is they did this with The Hobbit, and they made the Hobbit Lego game. But they only did the first 2 movies. Okay? They only did the first one and then the second one. There is no third Hobbit movie covered in the Lego game. And I find that extremely weird and annoying. And I understand why they did that because they had a deadline, whatever. They only had 2 movies to go off of. Yeah. There's not even elements of the third one present in Lego The Hobbit. It's such a weird thing. It's such a niche thing to complain about. But every time I think about it, I go like, man, that's a missed opportunity. Like, those Hobbit movies aren't great. They're not amazing. I like them because I like Peter Jackson. I like those Lord of the Rings movies. The best Lego game is Lego Lord of the Rings, but purely because it has a crescendo of the movies, beginning, middle, end.
And that was like the first one that had like full voice acting, right? Was that Lego Lord of the Rings?
It was Lego Lord of the Rings because they use the voice clips from the movies.
Do they really? Okay.
They do. Yeah, they do. They don't. They don't dub them.
They don't have the whoa 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 whoa.
Yeah. So that was the turning point for Lego, and that's another thing I want to talk about. I really don't want to use all our mileage up here because I mentioned it on something, but they stopped doing the whole
I liked that.
I did. I love that stuff. It's so classic, I love the old.
It's timeless. Yeah,
it's timeless. It feels like pantomiming. It feels like old silent film sort of things. You don't have to speak a language to understand what's going on. I like that. It's very, very childish, very twee, very playful, and it just became a different thing. Like, it might have been. Was it Lego? Maybe it was Lego Batman 2. No, because Lego Batman 3 didn't have voice acting. I played that entire game for some weird reason. I think it was Lord of the Rings because they used voice clips, and then every game going forward they had been voice acted, as far as I understand. Where they got to like the Skywalker saga, and they just redubbed it, like to have people actually voice act the characters instead of going, we're going to just pick clips from movies and try to fit them awkwardly. They just, cast Luke as Luke and stuff. They just made sound alikes, and that's what they did for like the Lego Avengers game level, Lego Marvel superheroes. They just had people come in and play the characters, which is interesting. But yeah, the whole Lego thing is odd because they're not really making that type of Lego game anymore. If anything, Lego is licensing out their IP to people. Like the format of being a Lego thing, they are licensing that out now in terms of video games. Traveler's Tales is not doing them primarily anymore.
Okay.
They changed this recently after Skywalker Saga because they wanted more variety in their games because people were always complaining about them being stale.
It's a Lego game. Yeah, you at this point you know what to expect when you buy a Lego game, but I guess they didn't like that.
No, yeah, you've been doing the same things in a Lego game since the first iteration.
Yeah, since those first Lego Star Wars games.
Basically, you were getting mini kits, you were collecting characters, you were creating your own characters, you're going through the motions of playing through the IP you've selected to play the game, and I love those old games, like especially Lego Star Wars 1, 2, Indiana Jones. I adored Indiana Jones. Lego
Indiana Jones was the last one I played.
Yeah, those games are just so good, so nostalgic for me. I played the complete saga of Lego Star Wars so many times. I have played those games to death. Yep. They hold a special place in my heart, really. And the mileage you get is the IP strength. Like Star Wars has a lot of movies. They covered all of them up to the point with the complete saga, and then they kind of covered them as they came out until they came out with 9, and then they did Skywalker Saga to complete the Star Wars thing, and they haven't made a movie since, because 9 was so bad. But yeah, Lego is a very interesting beast. Lego 2K Drive, they came out with that recently.
Yeah, I had a friend that was pretty big into Lego 2K Drive for a bit. He was really excited for it.
Yeah, I heard it was good. And they're doing Lego Horizon now, which, who asked for that? I don't know.
I've heard that it's actually supposed to be, from what I've heard from reviews, it might be the best offering in terms of an open world Lego game. So
I hear it's good. I do hear it's good.
Yeah.
But in terms of IP strength, Ralph from SkillUp said this, that Horizon feels like Avatar. It's extremely popular, but no one kind of likes it like that. They like it because it's popular and that it's ubiquitous in a way, but it's kind of shocking that it even gained prominence in the first place because it's so kind of lukewarm and milquetoast.
Yeah. It's not really it's not really something that you can connect with on a personal level, right? Where's my fans out there like I love James Cameron's Avatar. That's my IP right there.
There are people out there. I don't know if you remember the people that want to be cat people. They're like, oh my god, this was so real. This was so this awakened something in me where I needed to become a
No, I don't remember. That's awesome though. That's I want to meet someone like that. I want to meet the James Cameron cat person, and I want to have a conversation with them.
Those people actually exist, which is great.
Awesome.
Because that world was so realized.
In
terms of a cinematic.
It was way ahead of its time. Holy crap! I still got to see that second movie. I've heard that is phenomenal.
Oh, okay. So if we want to get into it a little bit, 2 is amazing. That movie is great.
I love that first one.
So that's where I differ from you. I don't like the first one.
Really? I watched that first one when I was, a kid back in IMAX, and that's the only time I ever watched it, but I remember it being fantastic.
It's just Dances with Wolves with blue people. I'm not about that. It's fine. It's fine. It's got.
They developed technology just for that, thing. We wouldn't be where we are today with CGI if it wasn't for James Cameron's Avatar.
Right, and I think they even do way more within this new one. There's a couple shots in this where they are melding water with CG characters, and it's completely seamless. And you're like, I don't know how they did this. How did they animate water running over this character's hands while he's tying this rope down? It looks so unbelievably real. Nice. You're just shocked. This could be a person. And I just think 2 as a movie is better. You kind of got the first one to kind of build off of, which is good. The first one is fine. It's inoffensive. It's whatever. The second one it's really heart-wrenching. It's really impactful, very emotional movie. You feel like you understand the family of the Sullys, which are the Na'vi characters you follow, basically. And it sounds like they're going to make 3 or 4 of them. They've already made 3 and 4, I want to say, and maybe 5 and 6 they have coming. I don't know, but basically he laid out the entire plan for them as a studio. I was like, hey, I'm going to make 2 of these at a time. Just let me do it. Let me figure it out. Just greenlight them for me. I'll make you tons of money.
People
which is really funny.
Movies.
There's a short story with him trying to get those movies greenlit, the sequels to Avatar and Avatar 2. People are like, oh, should we do this? This is a lot of money, this and that. And he's like, you know what? This building you're sitting in right now, Terminator 2 built that for you, buddy. The reason you're here is because I made Terminator 2.
That's a good movie.
You should just do that. You should just do this movie for me. Give me everything. Give me all the money. And they're like, you're right, go for it. And he's making a movie about blue people. So
yeah, we like our blue people. They're pretty cool.
We like our blue people. I didn't even do that, but crooked Kamala.
Yeah, so let's tie it into games. So didn't they have a movie tie-in for that new Avatar movie?
They had a movie tie-in for the first one, but they made a brand new game to coincide with 2.
Okay.
It's not of the second movie, but it's like a kind of like side story.
Oh,
it feels like
okay.
It feels like Avatar 2 Gaiden. Like it feels like story Avatar stuff. I haven't played it. I hear it's fine. It feels like open world Ubisoft stuff.
Yeah.
You know.
If you like that, then go for it.
Far Cry with 8-foot tall blue people. Like, as far as I can tell.
Yeah.
Which is fine. Sure, it's totally fine. I have not played it, but on a sale I might pick it up and kind of crack at it. But yeah, just to kind of detour, but Avatar 2 is an excellent movie. I was shocked.
I'm going to have to check that out.
Yeah, it's good. It's really long. It's like 3 hours, but it's worth your time. I would set apart a day and take breaks, but it's good. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah. But yeah, quick anecdote on the Lego games. Here's my piece on it.
Please.
Well, I was just gonna say that Indiana Jones game for the Wii was actually one of the first ways to mod a Wii, because there was a security exploit found within the way they save your custom characters to your Wii allows you to inject code into the Wii to perform the mods required to run, homebrew and things like that on the Wii. So,
like it's an injector sort of thing.
Yeah. Yep.
Wow,
so people built an injector for that Lego Indiana Jones game that I happened to have lying around at the time. I've actually lost my copy of that game, so it's kind of a bummer. But
great game.
It's a great game though. But so that's my little anecdote. So that was the way I modded my Wii back in the day, was using that Lego Indiana Jones game.
That's some fun trivia. So we're going a little long. I kind of want to get to our topic a little bit, but is there any more of your odds and ends you kind of want to touch?
Yeah, real quick, I'll just talk about Lethal Company. That was a fun multiplayer game back when that came out last year. And it's still getting regular updates. So it's actually, it might have been the beginning of this year. I can't quite remember, but regardless, it's getting regular updates, and so I went back to that with a group of like 5 or 6 people with mods. You can play with like however many people you want, and we had it kind of a little bit vanilla plus, to add a few things to it, but it was mostly just that base game content expanded on from the updates, and it's a good time just running around getting parts, and
it feels shenanigans. I kind of like that about it.
It's fun, yeah. So that's a good romp. And then Guilty Gear Strive, fighting game near and dear to my heart. They're going to be actually tomorrow. That's going to be dropping. They're going to be dropping a new DLC character release. Dizzy, pretty popular character from the series, is getting added to this iteration of the game. So, it's pretty excited for that. It's a fun fighting game. Definitely highly recommend it for 2D fighters.
Yeah, I hope you stream that. I hope I would watch that. That sounds interesting.
Yeah.
But that's cool. That's odds and ends, little bits and pieces we've been playing here and there that aren't new stuff. We kind of went at length on that stuff, so I don't want to go too hard on this, but I kind of wanted to get it's All Hallows Eve. It is the 30th of October as we're recording, and I don't want to like always timestamp these things, but in terms of our topic, I kind of feel like I have to. I want to make the best Halloween game list and just kind of like run down some stuff.
Yeah.
What are some good games. Like we talked about Silent 2 at the beginning.
Yeah, it's a good one.
And I think that's a good one. That's a really good one. I have a couple I can add, but I want to hear your takes. I don't want to make like a crazy list, but like, what are some essential 5 to 10 games that you would kind of throw out there and make a Halloween list out of? I guess you go ahead.
Yeah, so for some spooky, games, I would probably start with just like any I guess let's throw in like some RPG Maker horror games like Yume Nikki, Ib, The Crooked Man is one that I like personally. That's kind of a hit for me. So throw those in there. Maybe for some
RPG Maker games, you said?
Yeah, RPG Maker games. Yeah, those were all RPG Maker games.
Okay.
So those are some good ones to throw in there. Maybe Majora's Mask, Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask, that's a good one. Lots of creepy vibes. But basically, I was going to say anything that's like that N64 PS1 era just falls right into that uncanny valley to where anything with those types of polygonal graphics just intensifies when they're trying to go for that horror vibe and feel. It transports you like into a sort of a surrealist world to where the point where you could even argue that in the right conditions, Bubsy 3D could be a good horror game. I actually have Bubsy 3D on that shelf as well. So
he invoked Bubsy. That is horrifying unto itself.
Yes, Bubsy 3D, classic Halloween game. There you go.
So not to get too back into the Grubberverse or the giant bomb of it all, but he played Bubsy 3D on stream, and I forget who made it. It was Sony Bend. They were called something else when they made Bubsy 3D, but he put out on Twitter that he couldn't get past a sort of area, even with tutorials on YouTube or whatever. And he reached out to Sony Bend. He's like, "You guys made this game. Do you know what I'm supposed to do?" And they said like, "Lol, good luck."
No, it's a good game.
It's super not.
It was before Mario 64. Okay.
Yeah.
It was pre Mario 64, and it's incredible for what it was. Right? It was innovating in a space that had never been done before. That 3D platformer space had never been done before. It was innovative. It was inspiring. It was fantastic, you could say.
Okay, well, we can joke all we like. Bubsy 3D is a trash game for trash people. I was going to bring up like that version, that sort of time period of games. Like, what's a horror game or something spooky that kind of harkens to that? It came out a couple years ago. I haven't finished it all the way. I really want to. Signalis is very similar.
Yeah, I love Signalis. That's a fun one. Fun throwback to that survival horror genre.
Yeah, totally. It's got kind of notes of Silent Hill in there with the isometric top down and fixed camera angles of a Resident Evil 2 or 3 or something like that.
Yeah.
It's really good.
Limited inventory system as well, but you can also choose to remove the limited inventory system with some later updates that they did. I played it on release and absolutely fell in love with it, so I quickly went ahead and got all the achievements on that game. I mean, it's featured on my Steam profile as one of my favorite games on there, so it's a good time.
Yeah, I have yet to finish Signalis, but I'm about halfway through since I played it, and something caught my attention, and I kind of got pulled away, but Signalis is really good. That's something recent. Crow Country came out this year, too. I hear Crow Country is really good. It's that, like, it feels like Final Fantasy VII character models by way of that Resident Evil camera angle. But it's not fixed. It is that isometric view, but you can rotate the camera, and it feels very a piece of that old retro style. You're basically this investigator investigating this theme park called Crow Country, and it's got tank controls if you want it. It's got kind of poor aiming if you want it. It's as hard as you want it to be from a mechanical level in terms of like, hey, you want a retro throwback? We kind of put controls in place to make you feel that way. So Crow Country is a recent one, just like Signalis, that I think is worth your time. The number one thing, I would say, the number one game that you should play during this time period is Dead Space. The remake is immaculate. It's incredible. It is way better. Yeah, it's better than the original. The original's a masterpiece. It is better in every single way, and they made the bad parts of that game good. It is a masterpiece. Okay. It is as close as you can get to a perfect game in the horror genre as I can think of. Dead Space, I beat it on every difficulty mode. I even did it on the mode where you cannot save past a certain point, or, well, if you die, your save gets burned, basically, so you have to be very selective. In Dead Space 2, you had only a certain amount of saves, and you might have had a certain amount of saves in the first one. I don't know. But in this Dead Space remake, the hardest difficulty, you can't die. Because if you die, your save is wiped. So you have to be very, very careful. And you have to beat the game on that for a trophy, which is really, really, really difficult. But it's so satisfying. They have designed that game so you can play it and beat it with the starter weapon, which is amazing. The plasma cutter is one of the best weapons in any video game. The setting is in space. Think of it as Event Horizon. It's very similar to that. That's kind of where they got their inspiration from, was the Event Horizon movie, where it's just, demons, aliens in space, basically. People are being transmuted into these, organisms that are looking to kill you. That's really what it is.
Awesome. That's freaky.
Yeah. It is. It's very scary, actually. Like, the first one, I think the first one is not as scary in terms of visuals anymore, but the sound design is horrifically tense. Like, it's just, you are always on tenterhooks, because you're just like, I hear something, but I don't see it. What am I looking for? That is that game in a nutshell, the first one. Once you start encountering things, you go like, okay, here's another necromorph, I gotta go kill it, But the thing that is interesting about Dead Space is there's a couple conversations I want to have about it. It's, the first thing is environmental storytelling. This is one of the most blatant, devices they do in any game, where there's like, it's the template of, hey, we wrote something on the wall in blood, this is what you need to do. And in terms of what you need to do, it wasn't clear in making the game initially. People were having issues shooting the enemies in the head, which is not what the game was designed to be. The intent of the game was to have people shoot the limbs off and use their limbs as actual weapons in the actual playing of the game. But people in playtesting didn't understand that, so they were shooting heads. So the environmental team went in and they put this sign up at the beginning of the game when you get the plasma cutter saying, cut off their limbs in blood. Which is a funny thing. It's like kind of like the yellow tape in any game where you're like, oh, go this direction. It's playtesting 101. You don't know what to do, pay attention to your environment, we'll tell you what you need to do, sort of thing. Yeah. Pretty blatant. But that accepting, it's brilliant, because you're not dispatching enemies normally. You are trying to, it's kind of like a combat puzzle in a way, where you're taking limbs apart, you have this force grab, you can cut off a limb, take that severed limb, shove it into their face, pin to a wall. The music is bombastic and scary. There's a lot of creeping dread around every corner. The remake looks amazing. It is maybe the best looking next gen video game, like straight up. It was done by EA Motive, which is really interesting. EA Motive, they only did one game besides this. They did Star Wars Squadrons, I want to say, which is the X-Wing fighter game. And they are doing the new Iron Man game, which I am, having played Dead Space Remake, I am way more excited for. That Iron Man game is going to be really good, because they know how to make a good game with Dead Space. So, Dead Space Remake, highly recommended. It is maybe the best survival horror game of all time. Resident Evil 2 and 4 are like right there. I think I just like Dead Space more than those. I think it's tough. You catch me on a different day, it's different. It just is. Yeah. Dead Space, for recent stuff, is that. Another thing I wanted to say before I let you go again is kind of like an older title. I kind of want to talk about 2 as one, because it feels like they're all in constant conversation with each other. The Evil Within 1 and 2. Okay, those are the other ones I would say.
Yeah, I know nothing about these games, so.
Yeah, they're excellent games. The first one less so. It feels more like a project. But they are by Shinji Mikami, who did Resident Evil 2, 3, 4. Well, primarily 4. He helped a bit on 2 and parts of 3, not all of 3. I think he was doing some development on 4, early stages of development. And he was a part of making this, basically. But yeah, it's he basically left Capcom after years of working there to make his own studio, Tango Gameworks, who ended up making Hi-Fi Rush, which is a really good game. He didn't direct that one, but that one. Yeah, Hi-Fi Rush is excellent. But they were known initially for these horror titles with Shinji Mikami. He directed the first one, not the second one. John Johannes directed the second one. He was a producer on the second. John Johannes went on to make Hi-Fi Rush as the lead director, which is really cool. But the Evil Within 1 is kind of clunky, kind of not perfect. It looks pretty bad by standards nowadays. It came out in 2014, which was kind of a dead year in gaming. So it kind of got put out there to let hang. I was surprised they made a second one because the first one is, at first glance, not great, but there's enough good ideas in that first one to warrant a second one. I'm glad the second one did get made because the second one's so much better. But in the first one, you basically play as a detective where you're going through a creepy hospital, something bad's happened there, and you're trying to figure out what's going on. And it turns out, and I'm not going to spoil the game, everything's not what it seems. There's a facade going on, and you're trying to find out the conspiracy of it. But it's very like, it's like Silent Hill 2, where it's like liminal spaces. We might not be in the real world, sort of thing. Like, very paranormal. Like, we are not. This is not real life. Actually, this would be in somebody's brain. Like,
nice.
That sort of. The art design in the first one especially is really, really interesting. They do some really cool stuff with environments. The boss fights are actually really cool. But the one that I prefer over it is 2. I think 2 is just a better game. It is kind of a slightly open world game, like we were talking about earlier. It's a hub and spoke open world game. And it feels better, looks better, sounds better. They even changed the voice actor, which is really weird. I think the voice actor for the original character, his name is Sebastian Castellanos, he's not as good in the first one. The second one really improves upon that. And the story's actually better, too. And basically, there's a twist towards the end of the Evil Within the original that the second one kind of takes off and runs with it. So you kind of know the premise of the entire world you're in as you start the second one. But yeah, I platinumed that game. I completed every bit of it, beat on every difficulty. Really, really enjoyed the second one. If you want something just straight up creepy, the second one's better. In terms of just like, a game with interesting ideas, but maybe not perfect execution, the first one's good. They will never remaster it, I don't think. So you might as well just get it. And it's always pretty cheap. The DLC is bad. I don't think the DLC is good at all. It's almost unplayable how bad it is. It feels like it wasn't even play tested at points, which is a bummer.
Gotcha.
But yeah, they share characters between the two games, but they feel kind of like the first one was an experiment, the second one's an actual realization. Different characters or different voice acting for the characters makes it feel like 2 different games almost with the same themes. So Evil Within 1, Evil Within 2, if you really want to get crazy, play both of them. But 2 especially is excellent. It's an excellent video game. Not always very scary. It's that Resident Evil 2 issue where the beginning is scarier than the end because you get more tools as you play. It kind of becomes more sci-fi at the end of Evil Within 2. Same for Resident Evil 2, where you're going through secret labs and stuff, and you have grenade launchers and all this crap. Whereas at the beginning, you're kind of crawling through corridors, dodging paranormal creatures and stuff. The standout set piece of Evil Within 2 takes place within an art gallery, and there's this creature with like a telescoping camera for a face, and the stuff they do with like pictures and like your character reacting to his environment, and there being like art displays around. It's really cool. I think it's excellent. So
the creepy art museum. That's a good scenario.
Yeah, and it kind of reminds me of like the Layer of Fear games, which is called also by Bloober Team, which is interesting. But another, real quick before we start, another anecdote about Resident Evil as a series, Resident Evil 4. It's kind of interesting. The first Devil May Cry was supposed to be a prototype of Resident Evil 4 that was rejected, and they wanted to go into a different direction. So they made a spin-off, and they called it. It was going to be a spin-off of Resident Evil, and they changed it to Devil May Cry, and they started Resident Evil 4 from scratch after that, which is really kind of fun. I find that really interesting since we were talking about Shinji Mikami and all that.
Yeah.
But yeah, he has since retired and left Tango, and then Xbox annexed Tango, which was a huge bummer. And then Krafton picked them up recently to make Hi-Fi Rush 2. I don't think they own any other IP except for Hi-Fi Rush, which is a bummer. They also have Ghostwire Tokyo. Xbox still has them. So the only game they have from that original nucleus, that studio, is Hi-Fi Rush 2. Or Hi-Fi Rush IP. So, but yeah, those 3 games are excellent. Any more from you?
Yeah, I've got a lot that I've been kind of sitting on and thinking about. So
yeah, go ahead.
So we'll just start with we were talking about sort of those survival horror. A while back, I tried to play that Nintendo's only survival horror game, Eternal Darkness, for the GameCube. And
yeah.
Yes. Silicon Knights did that. They were they did. It wasn't exactly Nintendo's primary team, but they did that Metal Gear Solid remake as well for the GameCube. That's the only time I actually ever got through the first Metal Gear Solid was that GameCube remake, so I still got to go back and play that original. But
well, we have a story about that. Do you want to tell the people what happened with Twin Snakes? What did I do to you?
Oh man, this guy, he spoiled the whole memory card thing with well, I guess I'm spoiling it now, but spoilers.
Wow.
Psycho Mantis reads your memory card. Got that spoiled for me, but anyways, so back to Spookyville though. So yeah, that's a fun experience that I didn't get through all the way through that game, and in fact I didn't get very far into that game either because I got kind of lost. So I'm thinking it's the kind of game that you really need a guide to get through because it's very archaic and very cryptic. But if I went back through it with a guide, I think I'd have a good time. It has some really cool ideas, some time traveling stuff. So yeah, it gets pretty interesting. So I like that kind of horror, like time travel horror, time horror is really big for me. So
they only made one of those, right? It's just Eternal Darkness for Sanity's Requiem.
Yeah, they just made the one. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep, that was the sole Nintendo piece of the pie for survival horror. So. Besides Luigi's Mansion.
If we want to get like granular, Resident Evil 4, it was part of the Capcom 5. They said it was only.
Oh yeah, that's true.
And everything else.
Yeah, I actually was gonna interject earlier when we were talking about that Resident 4 remake versus the original.
Yeah.
What about that Wii version? Everyone really seems to like that Wii version with the pointer controls because that allows for really precise aiming.
Yeah, I think people think that of the original version of Resident Evil 4, that is the best version. The version because like
good implementation of the waggle, right?
Extremely good. Well, it's a precise way to do it. I would. And yeah, like the original version was on GameCube. Original Resident Evil 4 was on GameCube, the red cover. That's the one you bought. Yep. And Shinji Mikami himself said, listen, this game is going nowhere but the GameCube. We developed it with GameCube in mind only. And ended up going to PS2 right after. Something like that they put on PS2 or 2005. So not long after.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's kind of became like the game to port to every console. Wii got a version. Wii has the best version, is what I understand. And then they ported it again to the 360, PS3.
They ported it to mobile phones, didn't they?
What's that?
They ported it to mobile, right? There was a mobile port at one point for that original game. Like an iPhone, Android port.
They made the remake of 2 and 3 and 4. I think they put those on iPhone. I don't know.
They put those remakes on there? Okay.
I'm pretty sure they did. Yeah,
Interesting.
I'm pretty sure selling very well.
So if you want those touchscreen phone controls, there you go.
Actually, super don'ts.
Yeah.
This is a topic I want to cover sometime. It's video game ephemera. It's just like weird things like that coincided with like interesting video games, like the chainsaw controller from the GameCube for Resident Evil 4. That was like a
never heard of that.
You've never heard of that?
No. I've got a pair of DK Bongos. That's a pretty good controller.
It is a literal chainsaw controller that is Resident Evil 4. It's a GameCube controller, I want to say, or a PlayStation.
All right, I gotta find one of these so I can play through Dark Souls with it.
Sure, whatever you want to do.
I need to shred through Dark Souls. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, but chainsaw controller. That's kind of wild.
Nice.
But yeah, Resident Evil 4, honestly, that's a good Halloween game because it's not too scary. It's just spooky enough. Since we talked about it, the Resident Evil remakes are excellent. 3 is okay. It's good. It's short, but it's nothing like 2 and 4. 2 and 4 are just they're the best in their genre. The remakes are just really good. They're really, really good.
Yeah.
But yeah, carry on.
Here's my gaming confession for the day.
Okay.
Only Resident Evil game I've ever played through is Resident Evil 7. It's the only one.
If you're going to play any of the new ones, 7's good.
7's a really solid experience. Highly recommend. I played all the DLC and everything for that. I loved that game.
That game is, oh my gosh. I played that game in VR. I about lost my mind.
So I could definitely recommend that one at least. But
yeah, 7's 8. If you like 7, you would love 8. 8 is really good.
They got the big vampire lady that like steps on you or something. I don't know. I don't know if it's for me.
I'll be completely honest with you. She's not in the game that long.
Really? That was just their marketing thing to get the gooners?
I mean, maybe they kind of tripped their way to getting that because they went like, oh crap, she's like the number one draw of this game.
Uh-huh.
She's not long. I guess we're going to make her like the promotion for this thing. And they kind of like weirdly fell into it. It's not like that.
Okay.
Like Resident Evil 8 is very like, hey, we have a cadre of villains, and she's one of them. She's like the first one to encounter.
Well, that was kind of how 7 was, right? They had multiple sort of villains that you were trying to look out for.
The family, the Baker family, yeah. And another anecdote that I find very funny is Jack Baker, the patriarch. He looks like my father-in-law from 7. I was playing through 7 whenever I was dating my wife. I was visiting her at college, and I brought my PlayStation with me because she would go to class, and I would just be playing while she was in class. And we had a scary moment with the dad in that game. I was like, holy crap, it looks like her dad. I can't see this.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah, so Resident Evil 7's a little more real for me. I'm gonna be honest. So yeah, if you're gonna play any Resident Evil, if you like 7, you would love 8. I think 8 is really good.
I want to check it out at some point.
Yeah, 8 is the best parts of 4 with the viewpoint of 7.
Yeah.
I think 8 might be my second favorite of all.
Okay.
Yeah, Resident Evil 2. It's like Resident Evil 2, 8, 4. Like it's those 3 for me.
So let's pull the topic away a little bit from Resident Evil. You talked about the Nintendo show earlier. I feel like we might accidentally be turning into the Resident Evil show.
Maybe.
But so yeah, Resident Evil is a great series, but I do need to get around to playing more in the series. But for other spooky shenanigans, so. Please. Back on the anecdote from last episode of Nintendo Power advertisements, there was one game that was absolutely like had lived rent free for me in my head for a long time that I never got to actually experience, but it had like this really creepy advertising. It was Dementia for the Nintendo DS.
Dementia. I'm not familiar with this. Dementia.
Yeah. So, it's a hospital setting, and it's a fully realized first-person survival horror on the Nintendo DS.
Wait, are you thinking of Dementium?
Yeah, Dementium. Yep, Dementium. That's the one. Yep, Dementium. Yep.
Oh, wow,
and
This cover's gnarly.
Yes, the cover art. Yeah, that was the advertisement for Nintendo Power.
Dementium 2 has a person opening their mouth and a hand coming out of it grabbing her forehead. That's gnarly.
Yeah.
Wow.
So Nintendo DS horror game series, first person survival horror. You get all the tropes. You get weapons as you progress. You get better weapons. And they recently ported those games a little bit remastered, but not too much, to the Switch. So yes. So I got to, for the first time this year, I got to experience that. That was at the beginning of this year. I got to experience Dementium for the first time. Yeah. That was a game that I had always wanted to play, but I never got around to playing because I was a kid back when it came out on the DS. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. So I'd highly recommend it as a sort of a very focused experience of that survival horror, creepy hospital vibes, creepy enemy designs. There's not a lot of enemy designs, right? Nintendo DS game. But what they do with that hardware, it's incredible. I'm playing this on my Switch, and I'm like, this could cut for a budget Switch game. This is a good game. So
you're saying they didn't do a ton of remaster work to it, but a little bit? Yeah,
not a ton. It's a remaster, not a remake. So it's
it looks like a DS game, but maybe some models.
Yeah. I don't even think it's new models. I think it's just the textures up-res, but
textures. Yeah, the geometry looks like a DS thing, but the textures look up-res. Yeah.
The geometry looks like a DS thing, but with the caveat of it doesn't look like a DS game. That original DS game looked so good that they didn't even have to do much to make that work for the Switch. So
interesting.
Hidden gem right there. Hidden horror gem right there.
Yeah, it's $12. I will buy this thing.
Yeah.
That sounds amazing.
It's creepy.
I bought two games that night because of you. I'm
You're welcome. So
hey, I'm all for recommendations. That's all.
Yeah, it's creepy. So
did they expect that on Switch 2 or just the first?
Just the first, I believe. Just the first. Yep.
Yeah.
So I still gotta wait for them to re-release that second game. Actually, no, that second game is on Steam. They have that second game. The first game is only on Switch. Second game is only on Steam. So
why would they do that? I hate it when they do that.
Yeah.
Stuff.
So if I want to play that second game, I can get it on Steam. So
yeah, they did that with Octopath. They're like, oh, we're going to put out the new one, the second one on new consoles, and we're not going to put out the first one. You're like, what are we doing? Just put out the first one first. You know. But yeah, Dementium. Okay,
so Dementium.
I bought that.
Yeah, good game. Check it out. It's a lot of fun. It's a very focused hospital spooky experience. You'll have a good time with it. Yeah. Good designs of enemies. So awesome. Good puzzles too. So that's a good one. And then here's one that it's not really a horror game, but it kind of shook me a little bit. So I think we played this around the same time too. The Forgotten City.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. It's not a horror game, but it's it's kind of chilling. It's very existential and very
existential. Yep. Very, very existential.
Yeah, we played this game pretty bad.
Yeah.
I think before I did though.
Yeah. I think I've got all the achievements on it, and
I do. You recommended it to me, and then I played it, and I'm like, this is just one of the best narrative games I've ever played.
It's horrifying in a real way because it's an existential sort of horror.
So this for people who haven't played is think of it as like a walking simulator. I mean, it's a bad way to say it, but it's a walking simulator.
Yeah. It's immersive sim sort of.
Yeah, and it's it takes place in this underground place called the Forgotten City. And we both have a lot of extensive history with this game, so we both can speak to it, which is great. From my experience, it's not on a clock necessarily, but there's a timer to things. There's a sequence of events that happens.
Yep.
And it's always going to happen this way.
Yep.
And it's
a looping game.
It's a very clockwork mechanized game. It's very Majora's Mask is very Outer Wilds. It's like, hey, at the beginning of your day, you were seeing this happen. and you have to try to kind of jump in at points.
Very fun mechanic.
Yeah, very fun mechanic. Outer Wilds is like this too. I think that's why you would like it.
Yeah.
The story is so surprising at the end of it. Like, you do get shook. You do get shook because you at the very end, not to spoil it, you are having some interesting discussions with like a creator figure, and you're like, what am I playing right now?
Yeah, I'm getting chills just thinking about that ending. Yeah.
End of that game is one of the best endings I've ever played of any game.
Yeah.
It is completely amazing.
I was like, what's going on here? Like, is this happening? Yeah. Is this real? Like, what is happening? Like, it was late at night and I was just shook.
Yeah, once you find out what the deal is with that place, because it's a very, like, you know,
unravel the mystery. Yep.
Yeah, it's a very snow globe setting. It's
like snow globe, yeah.
Being captured in this little hovel, and it kind of has a timer, resets. Once you find out what's going on and how different time periods might dovetail into it in terms of like a lore standpoint,
yeah, if you're a history buff, or if you're a religious buff, or if you're and just love that sort of, you know, just old society, old civilization setting, sci-fi setting, all of the above, you're going to be a fan of this.
It's spooky in a way where it's that existential dread you have, because once you figure out what's going on, you have to get involved in a real way and actually stop it from happening, or not, or make different decisions. Like, it really it informs the player with the story, with everything you've learned. You know, by the end of that game, you are a savant. You know exactly what's going on. You know what's going to happen when. You know what to do, where to go. You just need to decide what you want to do, and there's different paths you can take.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is. At first glance, you think it's one thing. It is not what it seems. It is one of those puzzle box games that, as you peel the onions and you get deeper and deeper, it keeps rewarding you until the very end. You are finding more things out, and when you have the final conversation in that game, it completely blows the world open, and it makes you want to play it again almost immediately.
Yeah.
To see, like, if you could see what was happening from the beginning. Man. Okay, so disclaimer: if you want to fast forward a second, I want to spoil it a little bit, just a little bit. Okay, the final conversation you have. Okay, I'm going to give you a second to fast forward. Give it 5 minutes, starting now. You talk to the creator of this entire clockwork universe that you have going on, and you find out that there are multiple civilizations that have treated this area like the afterlife. Like, you're seeing Egyptian sculptures, you're seeing what
Mesopotamian, Greek, and Roman, mostly.
Greek,
those are the 4 main influences.
Yeah, and you're like in Roman times. Like, everything seems like a Roman setting.
Yeah.
But the afterlife, for all intents and purposes. But really, it's like a purgatory almost. It's like a simulation run by this god.
Yeah.
And his wife, basically. His kind of jilted wife. And
it's based off of actual, like, lore as well, like historical lore. So.
Yeah. Yes. The final conversation you have with this deity is some of the most profound existentialism you can find in the medium.
It's Hades, isn't it? Isn't it Hades who you're talking to?
Hades, but he calls himself something different.
Yeah.
He's the equivalent of a Hades, basically. Yeah. And I think his wife is Persephone. I think it's basically
Persephone.
Persephone is like a major character in this game, and you don't find out about her for way later. But yeah, it's a puzzle box game. You, at the end of it, you are trying to solve this problem, because basically, as it stands, this cannot come to pass any longer. Like, this thing is going to end, and he's trying to make it end, and you're trying to reason with him, this god of this universe, this god of the afterlife, really, you know. It basically takes place in a spaceship in the fucking universe. Like, it's crazy.
It's an insane game. We could definitely unpack it in its own a crash course at some point, and that would be an interesting small little crash course. But
Yeah, it would need to be played to get fresh again with it. But, oh my gosh, it's just
great
impeccable.
Experience. Yeah, so I wanted to bring that one up and come back, people. Anyone fast forwarding?
We're done. It wasn't even 5 minutes, but we spoiled the end of the what was it called again? The
Forgotten City.
Yeah, the game. What's the game's name? Sorry, I forget.
The Forgotten City.
Forgotten City. Yeah, sorry,
yes.
my brain is reading me at 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's another, like, if you want to feel bad about your current situation of being a person on this earth, that you can play that game. And,
it'll make you feel things. That's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So, I guess let's round it off by giving our like definitive horror games. I think the best game you can play for me is Dead Space Remake. That's the best thing you can play in this horror period. That is what I would say to people who want to do it. The one that I love the most is Until Dawn. That original Until Dawn, the PS4 Until Dawn. I think they put out a remake that's not very good. It's like technically kind of busted. The original Until Dawn is untouchable in terms of like that narrative-based horror game that Supermassive made its money on, basically. They have a series now called The Dark Pictures that is kind of like little vignettes, little 6 to 7 hour games, horror games, that they kind of put a year to 2 clip during the spooky season so people play. They were really good streaming games. People really, like them. They're not, in terms of quality, they're not as high as an Until Dawn. It's a very like hit or miss sort of thing. Like, it feels like a Tales from the Crypt almost, or like a Creep Show, like very like quick hits of horror. It's like, hey, this is a little snippet here, a little snippet here. It's very genre focused horror games. That's what The Dark Pictures is. Until Dawn is like a long story based horror game, and The Quarry is also a game by them that is also as good as Until Dawn. That is very story based, very character heavy, horror themed, third person like exploration game where you make choices like very Telltale-esque. But the reason I brought up Until Dawn is the setting is just, oh man, how do I explain it? It's like a Canadian wilderness setting where with these young adults. They're out of high school. They're kind of young adults. They're meeting up after a tragedy, basically, that opens the game, where one of their core members died tragically. Actually, 2 of them. They were a pair of twin sisters. They died tragically on a mountainside after a prank went kind of horribly wrong. The brother was involved as well. There was a brother character, and they kind of scared off the twins, and they ended up dying. It's not spoiler. It's part of the game. Whatever. That's the premise. It's a year after the fact. They're all going back to this cabin for who knows what. Can't be good. But things are not good there. Things happen. There may or may not be Wendigos. I don't. Maybe you should find out. Until Dawn is excellent. I think it's really good. I have yet to play the remake, but if you're looking for like the quintessential horror game, that I personally, it's my favorite horror game. Until Dawn is where it's at. PS4 primarily is where you should play it. It looks great, sounds great. Has kind of like a lot of good actors in it. It's got Hayden Panettiere. It's got Brett Dalton from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. He's really good. A couple other people here and there that have been mostly TV actors. But yeah, it's super good. Peter Stormare, he's from John Wick. He plays, I think he's in John Wick 2. He plays the guy that is talking about the boogeyman in like Russian. It's really good. He's in a million other things too. He's also the guy in the boat in Nacho Libre talking about the eagle eggs.
Gotcha.
Yeah. He plays like this doctor guy who's kind of like your voice of reason throughout the game. You kind of check in with him in certain chapter intervals, and it kind of goes downhill from there. But Until Dawn, really good. That's kind of my crowning top. That's the one you should play. So, what about you?
Yeah, I got a couple more games before I talk about though. I'll try to get through them at a decent pace. But first of all, I'm going to talk about Pathologic, because this is a great time to talk about Pathologic. So Pathologic, sort of a survival horror, also like a survival sim in general. You have to manage all of your your food intake, your medicine intake, whatever, health, everything has to be managed in Pathologic, and you're kind of on a set story and have to do events in a certain order, and you're tasked with new orders every in-game day, and the entire game is on a sort of clock, and if you don't complete those tasks, then there's certain NPCs that are tied to you, and they will get sick with this plague that has rolled into this town that you're trying to cure. And there's so you don't want that to happen. You want them to survive so you can get the good ending, and everyone can live happily ever after according to your protagonist, because every protagonist has a different way to cure this sort of disease. And there's 3 different protagonists. One is a doctor of medicine, one is a naturopathic healer that is raised in this sort of it's sort of like the steppe region, so it's got some Slavic influence, it's got some Hungarian influence, Mongolian influence. It's that sort of steppe, your European steppe region, huge region there of wilderness and plains, and then so yeah, the mystical sort of a mystic and naturopathic sort of healing of the Haruspecs, and then the third protagonist is an actual miracle sort of healer, the Changeling. So and so you play as either any of those 3 protagonists. You'd go about it in that order typically. That's the recommended play order, is the Doctor, then the Haruspecs, and the Changeling. And it's a really difficult game. You definitely want to play it with a guide. But going through that game, experiencing that, the language that they use for a lot of the dialogue is really, really highbrow, high level. It barely even is English, to be honest. It's really high level dialogue from the characters. But it's a really interesting game. I really like it. I really like the atmosphere. It's got some jumps in there, and it's just a depressing atmosphere that I think that if you're looking for a game to sink your teeth into, Pathologic, great spooky game.
So there's the HD version. Is that the one you would?
Yeah, yep, the HD version, yep.
Gotcha. It's $1.24 on Steam right now. So
pick it up. Yep, definitely.
I will pick it up.
Yeah,
I bought multiple games tonight.
all right. I got one more. You won't be purchasing this one, luckily. So,
okay.
So you see the collection of PS1 games behind me, and
yes,
PS1 games we talked about earlier. They've got that great uncanny vibe. They can be very spooky, and you could pick up any Kingsfield game, Shadow Tower. You'd have a good spooky time, right, with any of those. I've been spooked several times in any of those, sort of low poly environments. But the one that I would probably recommend people that I really love, I think I love it more than any other first-person dungeon crawler, and that's Baroque. Now, Baroque. Okay. Don't play the animeified Atlas offering on PS2. We don't play that one. That's the bad one. We don't like that one. Play the original first-person dungeon crawler, because that one they turn into a third-person dungeon crawler, and it just loses a lot of its atmosphere. But that first one is absolutely bonkers. It is insane. They do so much with that. The limited graphics of the PlayStation, that the environments are just so surreal, and the enemies that you encounter are just harrowing, and there's just certain random events that happen in this game that are absolutely bone-chilling. I thought I was hearing and seeing things that weren't there when I was playing this game. Genuinely terrified while going through this game. And so the game itself is a first-person dungeon roguelike.
Mm.
So all of the floors of the dungeon, as you delve, randomly generated. The spawns randomly generated. The weapons randomly generated. Everything's randomly generated.
Mm-hmm.
On the PlayStation 1. Yeah.
Wow.
So you get a lot of replayability, a lot of intrigue. I think there's about 100 floors that you have to get through to actually complete the game.
Mm-hmm.
To get to the ending, but it's genuinely an awesome game. I was able to complete it in I think I died on one run of the game, and then after that I completed my first run, which you only get to go down so far before you have to go back up and do a thing in the overworld in order to unlock the rest of the dungeon, and then you can go all the way down and complete this game. But it is an incredible experience. That
I was seeing screenshots of that. That game looks insane.
Yeah, great soundtrack too, especially that opening soundtrack is really awesome. But
yeah, so Baroque. So is the Atlas version of that worth playing at all?
No, I would not recommend it at all. I would not. Yeah.
Game? No.
Hmm?
Is it a good game or no?
Which version?
Well, it looks like there's a Wii version or a PS2 version.
Yeah, no, you don't want to play either of those versions. I would not recommend them in the slightest. They're reimaginings of it to appeal to that anime audience that was really picking up steam in the PS2 Wii era. They converted everything to anime, which anime can't be scary. I'm a huge anime fan. Anime can't be scary. Sorry, Juji Ito, he's not scary. He's cool.
Oh.
He's interesting. He's not scary.
Oh.
Anime's not scary, but
I don't know. I don't know if I can go with you.
The point is, Baroque, that original PlayStation 1, Sega Saturn one's even better. I hear. I never played the Sega Saturn version of that, but
it looks end of this world crazy.
Yeah.
So
highly recommend that for a Halloween experience.
I guarantee you no one's played that game. I guarantee you.
Really?
I mean, in terms of normal people, no. Heard of that game. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
It sounds super good though.
It's one of my. It's up there in my top PS1 list. That's how good this game is to me. So.
Yeah. Okay. Any horror games to kind of cap it off? I kind of said my piece. Until Dawn is probably my favorite.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say for that average Joe, either check out Forgotten City or Signalis. If you're looking for something to really get deep dive into something weird, Pathologic, Baroque. Those are good choices, especially Baroque. Baroque is just such a great experience.
That's super cool. I love finding out about new old games. That's extremely exciting.
PlayStation 1 is my domain, so if there's a weird PlayStation 1 experience to be had, I'm definitely looking for it. So
that's cool. So what's the best way to play that Baroque game? Is it just emulate it? Is the best way?
Yeah, emulate an English patch of that is what I'd recommend. Then you can get that story. It's not much, but there's a little bit of interesting story to it.
Okay, gotcha. Well, that's basically our list. I think that's a good healthy dose of some horror goodness. I mean, it's almost November basically, but we wanted to kind of sneak for Halloween. Halloween's tomorrow, so by the time you hear this, it will not be Halloween anymore. So just use this as an evergreen example. But
all these games we recommended, I would recommend these next year. So I'd be talking about them next year.
Horror doesn't have the time or place. You can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
But since we're in the mood for it, I think that's good. So, kind of cap it off. Let's talk about what we've been watching. I've been watching a couple Halloween things here and there. I finished My Hero, caught up with that.
Yeah.
That last episode is really good. It feels like it cuts it off pretty quickly, though.
Yeah, nasty little cliffhanger there, that's for sure.
Yeah. It's. I wasn't upset, but I was like, really? That's a weird way to end that.
Yeah.
But you have the whole last season coming, and it's going to be all fighting. So,
yeah.
Yeah, Armored All Might is insane. What a cool idea.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, they clearly ripping a little bit off of Armored Batman, but
oh, for sure,
it's still pretty cool.
I love that he's like the teacher for these kids, and then at the end, these kids are basically inspiring him.
Yeah,
I love it. It's so good. If people have not watched My Hero Academia, you need to. Like, the fandom is kind of trash, but like the show is awesome.
Just like Persona.
It's very true too. Yeah, Persona. And honestly, like the Venn diagram of people that play Persona and My Hero is probably pretty close. So
yeah, visiting a local playground near you.
Yeah. Yeah. They need to knock on your door when they enter your town and say like, "Hey, I'm on a list."
They're on the sex offender shuffle. Yeah.
Something like that.
You ever hear that one, the sex offender shuffle?
I definitely have.
It's a funny one.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I finished that. That's really good. I'm making my way through Dragon Ball Z Kai. I'm almost done with that. I'm like 15 episodes out. I'm in the Boo Saga right now, which it's kind of bolted on to after Cell Saga, which is the pinnacle of DBZ. Cell Saga is just immaculate. It's so good. It's like the best thing Dragon Ball ever. I've seen the original show, almost done with DBZ Kai. Just kind of like slogging through the last bit of it. It's kind of weird how slow it gets at the end. Even when I don't have that many episodes left, I'm like, I kind of have to watch another episode. It's just not. It's not as consistently good, but it's good. It's still Dragon Ball. Dragon Ball's good, but they're getting into like Go tanks and stuff, and it's really weird. Like Gohan gets powerful by this guy holding his hands out for 20 hours. You just sit with Gohan forever, and you're just like, I want to die. But I hear it's good at the end. It's worth it. My friend Elaine, she said like, hey, you gotta just muscle through it. I'm like, okay, yeah. I'll just muscle through it, and I'm almost done. So I'll watch the movies after that, the super movies that are canon, probably the history of Trunks as well, so I can get that backstory with future Trunks, which is cool. And then I'll get finally to Super, which I'm pretty stoked about. I hear Super's great. But yeah, I'm just kind of like doing all the old stuff. DBZ, I might jump into Naruto after that. We'll see. I'm like a good deal into One Piece, so I wonder if I do that first. I'm like 80 episodes into One Piece, and I like that, but it's just a lot of work to do. Yeah. So
I hear they're planning on doing some sort of remake of One Piece to condense it. So
yeah, and there's a lot of filler too, but like. Yeah, it's just the adaptation is just crazy because it's 20 years of just episodes as they go, and then filler to fill in for when Oda has got to make the manga itself, and it's not ideal. It's just not ideal. It has zero flow, whatever. People are like, "Oh my god, it's like the best thing of all time." I'm like, well, you have a flow problem. I don't have a whole hell of a lot of time. I don't want this to be the only watching, Yeah. So watching that. Still trucking along with not my hero. Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. My wife's loving that show.
Great.
Just the main show. Real. Yeah, it's an excellent show. You recommended it to me. I love it. So, I've been keeping up with Dan. It's still good. And I'm along with it too. It's still good. Oh my gosh, what a fun concept. It's so outrageous. People just need to watch Dan. You don't need to know anything, but Turbo Granny be stealing that weenie for sure.
For real.
So. Dan's great. And then just to cap off Halloween stuff, I've watched some stuff here and there. My kind of running list for Halloween this year has been kind of up and down. I've been kind of picking at stuff, little movies here and there. I want to watch more horror shows, but I never have time to. So at some point I'll have to do that. But this year, what I really got into was, where's my list at? We watched tonight. Hocus Pocus rewatch, which is fine. I don't.
That's a fun one.
It's fun. It's fine. We watched that. We watch Coraline. We watch Paranorman just throughout the month. All the mainstays. The Addams Family 1 and 2. Those are great. Really good movies.
Yeah, those are fantastic. When they're burning the teachers and the little happy pilgrim girl, like that's a good time.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
It's in that second one, I think.
That's the second one. Yeah, those movies they have like the best cast of all time. I love the cast. But my favorite Halloween movie is Trick or Treat, which is like an anthology horror movie. Made by the guy that did Krampus, which is also a good movie. When we get to Christmas time, I'll talk about Krampus. It's really good. It's really good. Trick or Treat, highly recommended. It's like the best Halloween movie you can watch. It takes place on Halloween night. It's a bunch of random stories about people in this one town, and the kind of through line of it is there's this little kid with a bag on his head. He may or may not be a demon trying to make sure you keep tradition alive and not smack pumpkins and blow out candles during All Hallows Eve and Halloween night. He's kind of the informant for those who break the rules. But yeah, Trick or Treat, really good. So that's basically all I've been watching. What about you?
Yeah, Dan to Dan. I've been keeping up with that. And then I've been keeping up with ReZero. It's pretty good. Isekai series. It's got season 3 airing right now. Other than that, I haven't really been watching a whole lot. I've been trying to force myself to watch Lucky Star. It's like, it's an older one. It's the one that sort of started the what's called the moe boom. So it's like the first cute girls doing cute things sort of show that really took off. And
like
I don't know.
Joe?
So I consider Lucky Star, and this is gonna give me a lot of hate. I consider Lucky Star like bad Nichijou, right?
Okay.
So I'm a big fan of Nichijou, but Lucky Star is older than Nichijou, and it has some interesting moments. It has some funny bits. I get that. It's got some fun pop culture references that I get, but other than that, it's just a lot of like. I mean, if I was like, it has its audience, and that is that. I think that the best audience for that is that that Japanese audience. Like a lot of the jokes about like the foods that they're eating and like things like that. I don't really get it. I don't really understand it with my Western senses, and so like it's hard for me to recommend it. But I'm gonna try and get through it because I hear that a lot of people like it, and so it's something I've wanted to get through for a while. I've been on and off trying to get through it. So
that's how I feel about like Fairy Tail. Like I just can't.
I love Fairy Tail. I could
it's
watch
good.
It any day of the week.
Like people like say is the best, and I just go like I don't know.
Yeah, it's the best.
Yeah, that's what we've been watching and all that stuff. I want to be watching some different things, though, so that might change next week. It is to be determined how early this Christmas is going to start. It feels like it's starting earlier and earlier because my wife gets very antsy about watching things. She's like, there's something to watch, we should watch it all. I'm like, yeah, you're right. But, acceptably, Thanksgiving Day is like the day to do all that, in my opinion.
Yeah.
If you do Thanksgiving Day, you're golden. Like everything's done, you've eaten already. The holiday's like over, and you're just kind of like feeling happy.
Then you put on Christmas vacation.
Yeah,
National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. That's the good
100%. That is like the perfect after meal Thanksgiving movie.
Yeah.
So, that for sure is really good. Die Hard's also a really good one where it's Christmas adjacent enough, but it's an action movie, so you're gonna get that. Die Hard's the best Christmas movie, in my opinion.
That kinetic novel I mentioned at the beginning, Witch on the Holy Night. Well, the Holy Night is Christmas, so it's a Christmas novel. So read it around Christmas time. There you go.
For sure. But that's most of the podcast. This is going to be like a 3.5 hour podcast. We just talked already.
Yeah.
It's going to be a beast, but
it's 3 hours. So
talk about. I mean, it's 2 weeks of preparing for it, so we kind of have a lot to talk about. And I think at this point, we're going to have a lot more check-in, I think, because of all the stuff that we brought up. We started a lot of things this week, and I think that's probably going to tamp down as we, as we play things and finish things. Like, for instance, you finish Shadow, you're probably done with that.
Yeah.
Are you going to play Sonic Generations? I don't even know if you are.
I might, but I'd just talk about it briefly. I wouldn't get too big into details on it.
Right, yeah. I guess for next pod, I think I want to try to finish Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2, because that's short enough. I feel like I can actually get through it and have a good conversation about what I think it is. It's a very simple game for sure, but it's the presentation is worth talking about for sure. I think it's an amazing looking game and playing game, that sort of thing. To really get into it, I need to finish it. It's like 5-6 hours. But in the process of doing that, I kind of want to finish the first one to see how it relates to the first one. I'm like halfway through that one, so I've been holding off on finishing Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2. So I want to finish the first one and that one, and all that combined is like 8 hours of play, so it's definitely doable. And then I really want to finish Silent Hill 2. I think that's something I could do, and to make more headroom into Metaphor. I don't know how far I'll get. I really want the game to pick up though. Like, it feels like it's kind of like, okay, we did the big thing. We're in a down period. You kind of like figured other stuff out. Like, what's our next goal? It feels like that down slope of a Persona game where you're like, I just did the big dungeon. I'm kind of talking to my friends again, finding out what else to do. It's the whole Persona 5 problem. When they finish the dungeon, they put the bad guy away and they start looking at their phones going like, does anybody else need help? Like, it feels like that. So,
yeah, I mean, again, I think that those portions of just like talking to people and building your social links and stuff like that, I think that's the best portion of Persona. I like that better than the dungeons.
Yeah. I'm not saying I don't like it. That's the portion I'm in. I want to know what this game is trying to do. You know what I mean? Because the setup is so compelling. Like, that beginning setup, the first 5 hour setup is like really compelling. You're like, holy cow, that's what this game is about. It's about an election, like straight up. It is just about politics. So definitely worth checking out, and I want to play more of that. So for the next pod, for the next main flagship pod, Stick Trip pod, I will have more to talk about with probably those 3 titles. I'll try to make those my focus. In the meantime, during the off week, Noah, you have the Nosopers crash course you're probably going to do, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. In terms of new games, are you going to play anything next week? Or not next week, but in 2 weeks?
Yeah, I can't really guarantee anything. I'll just kind of... I'll definitely be checking out that Monster Hunter Wilds demo, beta, so...
Yeah, so about the beta, I didn't do everything in the beta. I did the first hunt. I felt pretty satisfied with that. There's some extra stuff you can do. I think you'll probably do it. You'll let me know. Yeah. There's extra small hunts you can do that top off that beta. So let me know how that is.
I'll probably check out all the content on there.
Yeah. I only played like 45 minutes of it. Like, I get the gist of it. I'll probably wait for the full game to watch it. So
sure.
But yeah, that's the Stick Trip podcast for this week. It's a hefty one. You'll be listening to this for about 2 weeks. So
enjoy.
Yeah, definitely enjoy. We'll try to get up as soon as possible. So we'll catch you on the flip flop, and I'm going to bed.
Yeah. Yep.
It's a big one, but we made it work. We made it happen. Some technical difficulties aside, but we're getting the audio side fixed, so we're doing a lot better on that front. Yep. This mic really helping. So I guess for closing thoughts, you got anything else?
I got nothing.
Okay, nothing. We'll just let's get the hell out of here then. So, all
right.
For Stick, I've been Power Glover. That's Noah Rada on behalf of him, and we'll see you on the crash course next week. Later.
See you.